この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。Alrighty, welcome everyone. I'm Teeaboo and I am here for Mushoku Tensei episode 9. We're one episode past the turning point and I've forgotten what the episode title is for this next one, and that's totally okay with me. We got some stuff to do here at the beginning of the episode before we get into the episode itself, and I don't know how this is actually going to be structured, so I'm just kind of going to wing it and go with my own recommendation, which is that sometimes you can't plan out the entirety of the future, you just have to jump and let it happen and unfold out with you. So, we got a few things to talk about Mushoku Tensei. I think this makes sense. I think people probably would expect that there's some stuff to talk about, given that I spent 2.5 hours and then 1.5 hours last week just talking about comments on Mushoku Tensei and Mushoku Tensei. It seems like our discussions are becoming a little bit more complicated as we move along, and that makes sense. When there's interesting and complicated information to unpack, the discussions around it are going to become exponentially more complicated as we bring in and add new perspectives and information to the context of this already dense piece of media that we're viewing and experiencing. So, I guess we have to either give up and walk away from the thing and just go, I guess it's too complicated for us to understand, or we have to be willing to dedicate the pain and suffering and effort of working to understand the thing in order to gain a couple % more understanding of the thing. That seems valuable to me, given that I've dedicated my life to understanding things and sharing what I come to believe that I have understood, which is a careful way of phrasing that, because what I understand about a thing might not be accurate. I'm just a person, and the way I share it might not be accurate, because I'm just a person, and so all I can share with you is what I believe to have come to understand, which is what I think, and so if I can do that as well as I possibly can, I can articulate it as effectively as I possibly can, then you can understand as well as you possibly can what I think, and we can come to some level of conclusion. And part of the way that that ends up working is when you respond to what I've said in the comments, and either have, specifically criticism or discussion of the way I said things, which is important, thinking about thinking, talking about talking, all these things are important, or ideas about the show itself, which add to the pool of ideas about the show. All of this leads to us collectively coming to a much greater understanding of the show through the lens of me speaking about the show, you watching me speak about the show, me watching you watch me speak about the show, and me watching myself speak about the show when I edit it, and all those layers of thinking about thinking about thinking about thinking about thinking leads to much better thought, I think. Maybe. It's a little complicated, but that's okay. This is discourse. And I want to highlight this. What we have going on right now in my YouTube channel, in my comments, not that they're mine, they're yours actually, they're communal spaces. I have some power over them because I am nominally the creator of them, right? Like I give you the space and you have it, or YouTube more applies the space to the space that I asked for from YouTube, which is I wish I had a place to post my comments and thoughts, and YouTube was like, sure, but part and parcel to the rules and regulations of you doing that is that there's a comment section. You can remove it if you want, but that's not a good idea. Why is that not a good idea? Why is it not a good idea to remove the comment section? Because you remove discourse. So you're just saying what you believe out into the world, and you believe that it's true, and you don't get any feedback or response. And feedback and response is pretty useful. We talked about this a lot in the giant Kill la Kill video that I just posted. Hey, Mushoku folks, if you've been enjoying the in-depth discussions, please go watch the Kill la Kill video. There's one that's free on the YouTube channel. It's the reading of the Kill la Kill OP1. Go watch it. It's like 15 minutes. I think it's excellent. And it is one tiny segment of a much longer 3.5 hour long video where I go through and I watch the first episode of Kill la Kill while being altered somewhat on some substances, which I'll tell you about in that video. I won't tell you about it here. It doesn't matter, but I'll tell you about it in that video. Go watch it. That full video is currently $1 on the Patreon. It's really worthwhile and you should go watch it. Please, please, please. I'm putting it on there for $1 because I think that I actually think that you'll care more about it if you pay for it. Does that make sense? Like, I think that you'll dismiss it if it's just free. And I think that if I make you pay for it, you'll be like, maybe there's something of value here. And maybe you'll actually think about it. So that would be cool. Go watch that video. But anyway, the reason that I bring it up is because I forgot my train of thought. Oh, well, anyway, it's important that we have discussion and we formulate a better idea about the thing ourselves. It's really a good idea. Okay, so that's really important, and the comment spotlights are really important, and going through comments and discussing them is really important. I did too much of it last week. That was too much of it. It was just enough of it, and it needed to be done. But we can't do that every week, okay? So we've got to refine the formula down a little bit so that we get more detail and value and as much density as we can without it being a 3-hour video that it's much harder to watch than like a denser coagulation of interesting concepts and ideas and stuff. Because the denser the content, I think the more valuable the content is. So we got to find that medium, that balance between the long form and the short form so that you can get the things out to as many people as possible. I think I've been thinking about this in some ways. One of the ways is that I need to start clipping shorts, like seriously thinking about every time I record a video, is there something in this video that's me talking for like a minute or two about something that I think is genuinely like, ooh, that's important. And then maybe I can clip that out and make it a YouTube short so that people might see it and go, whoa, wait, that's an interesting idea. How did that come from this? And they might want to watch the whole video. It seems like the reason that I haven't done it yet is because it feels manipulative. It's like, oh, you're just sectioning out a piece of the content. But why is that manipulative if that piece of the content contains more value in like 20 seconds than the whole thing contains in ratio for like an hour? Well, clipping that content so that 20,000 people see that really important content, and then maybe a few thousand of them go and watch the whole video and get a few more % of interesting content from it, and maybe a few percentage of them are like, this is the bomb dog, I gotta go support this guy on Patreon. Well, then maybe that would be a good thing for everybody involved, and maybe it would be a better way to share the best ideas that I have, which usually aren't ideas spread over the course of the entire video. They're little tiny ideas that could be cut out and put in a short and made into a thing, and that seems to make sense to me. So there are some things that I need to change about the way that I'm doing things, but as I continue on in the evolutionary process of producing better content, because that's what we're doing here, and there's constant, like, I'll hit a wall, well, not a wall, I'll hit a place where it's like, okay, my content is as good as I can consider making it, and then I'll just make content that way for like a year, and that's reasonable. That makes sense. That's the expectation. That's correct. That's good. I'll make content that way for like a year, and then something will change. It'll be like, okay, I need to figure out some other stuff, and we got to reshift and reorganize and move some of this stuff around and make some big changes. And we're in one of those changing circumstances right now where some changes need to happen with the way that the content is produced in order to produce better content. And then it'll solidify, and then I'll probably do it again that way, specifically that way, every week, every day, with failure and success and great failure for like a year. And then we'll come back and we'll change it again. That would be great. But we're in the midst of one of those changing periods, and that's pretty cool. Speaking of changing perspectives on content, my perspective on a lot of things in my life and other things, you can find out about this in the Kill Kill video. I'll show it again. The reasons for it and why it's happening. A lot of my perspective on the things in my life has shifted slightly. Now, it's not like I've changed perspectives from like here to like here. It's like I've changed perspectives from like here to like here. It's like I took one step back, realigned myself by like 1/10 of 1 degree, shifted, and I'm now trying to move forward again. That's how real life realignment seems to work, and real life change seems to work. It's not you go from doing everything wrong to suddenly doing everything right. It's like you're doing everything kind of right and kind of wrong at the same time. You step back one step away from the daily, everyday grind that is just you doing the things that work somewhat in order to make sure that you have food and shelter, right? You're able to take one step away from that and readjust and move towards something that might make it slightly easier for you to acquire food and shelter. And maybe, if you're really lucky, have some like personal fulfillment around what you're doing and stuff, right? Like it's one step back, a little teeny readjustment, and then a step forward and a real careful testing of the waters. And then like, does this sound like Mushoku Tensei? I think this should sound like Mushoku Tensei, right? Okay. And that's where we're starting to come to the point, or some of the point. Some of the point is this. I've been doing an okay job of reading Mushoku Tensei in terms of like reading into it and understanding it. I think I've been doing a pretty okay job on a surface level of reading and understanding Mushoku Tensei up to this point. As we've reached turning point 1, and like the world as RUDY knows it is about to shift dramatically. No matter what that turning point is, and I've said my theories and I think what I think, whatever that turning point is, RUDY is no longer going to be where he was, essentially. wherever he ends up, it's not going to be in the family household where people are respecting him, with Eris and teachers and Ghislaine and all these different things, nor is he going to be in the household and family of Paul and Zenitsu and the whole family that's going on there. He's not going to be in that safety either, nor is he going to be in the relative safety, if uncomfortable, of the previous past world where he's in his apartment doing his thing. He's going to be in a new place now. And so I think it behooves us to take a step back and look at where he's been from a slightly different perspective than I've been looking at it for now. So let's go ahead and do that. And essentially, I'm pulling up episode 1 of Mushoku Tensei. Sorry, we're going back to the fucking beginning. And I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if I'm going to get to record episode 9 today. I don't care. I don't care. I am in search of truth. I am in search of truth. I'm going to seek it honestly. I'm going to do the best that I can, and I need to do this in the line of doing that. This is part of that. There are some flaws with my interpretation of what has happened, or more accurately, I have been viewing the surface and seeing the shadows on the wall, the allegories as they come. But I have been critiquing them as shadows without recognizing that they are, in fact, something else casting those shadows. There is a fundamental reality behind the reality that is presented by the show. So we're going to take a sort of metaphorical, mythological lens to this and view the story of Mushoku Tensei as a myth. Why? Because Mushoku Tensei is a modern myth. What is a myth? A myth is a story that makes no sense, but makes perfect sense. It is a story about how to be in the world. It is a story about what happens when you are in certain ways in the world. It is a story about existence. It is a story about universals, not singulars. It is a story about the greatest of goods and a story about the greatest of evils. It is archetypal. It is not specific. It is general. Why do I bring all of this up? Because Mushoku Tensei, from my perspective, is not a specific story, but is an archetypal story, a mythological story. I want to bring up someone who I would view as a friend. I'm going to presume friendship with you. Iswaffle from my Discord is one of the staunchest, I guess you could say, Mushoku haters. That's an unfair straw man and a lie. I don't think that Iswaffle misunderstands Mushoku Tensei. I think that Iswaffle is trying very hard to understand why people care about this thing that they do not themselves particularly vibe with. Iswaffle and I had a pretty solid conversation yesterday, along with a number of other people who jumped in and had a very, very good conversation in our Discord about some of the more serious aspects of Mushoku Tensei. I highly recommend that if you think you have a level head on your shoulders and you're willing to put your pride and ego aside and have a discussion about what meaning means, come to my Discord. It will cost you $1, but everything worthwhile has an entry fee. So come to my Discord, join it via the Patreon, and come discuss with us, or read back through our discussions. Come be part of this community. I just think that it's important to be part of a community that's discussing things you find important. That's it. Okay. Iswaffle and we had a conversation, and it led to Iswaffle asking a question, which was, wait, can people learn concrete lessons from stories? And we found out that Iswaffle and I have a fundamental disagreement, and that fundamental disagreement is this. I believe that all lessons come from stories, and that in many ways, stories contain the only lessons that matter. Iswaffle believes that there are lessons that cannot be told via stories, which may be true, and that stories cannot change you, which seems like a possibility. Seems like a potentially valid point of view. It is not my point of view. It's fundamentally a disagreement with my perspective on reality. I think that we view reality as a series of stories with ourselves as protagonists. I think that we understand what things are within our world because of stories that we tell. I think that we understand the reasons to do things in the form of stories and heroic journeys and narratives. That the fundamental heroic or the fundamental human story is one of a failure, a descent into chaos, a failure and a realization of insufficiency, a descent into chaos, destruction, darkness, and the unconscious in order to find something of value that will elevate us out of it. That thing usually takes the form of the sword of truth. You grab the sword of truth, and armed with it, and armored maybe with something else like honesty, you come out of the darkness, return to the light and the culture that birthed you, prove yourself to your heavenly father, are embraced by the heavenly female, the divine feminine, and in general are accepted into, with your new information and your sort of truth that you bring back, you cut away the flaws of your old society and old state of being, and are reaccepted into society, bringing back something new. To restate this, the human narrative is one of, the tribe is safe inside this valley, but we don't have enough food. Something is fundamentally wrong. The heroic individual is the one who climbs the mountain to see what's on the other side of the mountain, discovers that there's another valley over there, the truth, returns to the tribe, bringing back that new information. Is told by the leaders of that tribe that is impossible and there cannot be berry patches on the other sides of the mountain, and so the person goes off and sets off and starts their own tribe, or any number of other things. You know, maybe the heroic narrative is that they convince their tribe to go across the mountain and they save their tribe by bringing them to the berry patches that exist on the other side of the mountain. Or maybe it's the story that their tribe is corrupt and that won't work anymore, and so they go off with their little family to the other side of the mountain. They start their own family on the side where the berry patches are. That's the Noah story, by the way, right? The world is corrupt except for this one guy who's not corrupt. Crazy, right? So he and one of each pair of good animals got on a boat and everybody else died and they started anew. That's the Noah story. That's also the story of there's no food here and there are berries over the mountains, but the authoritarian leader of my tribe won't let us go and seek the berries, so I'm going to run away. It's the same story. These stories matter. They matter. They matter. There's a reason that we have that mythological context. And so, this conversation that I had with his Fafel, where I stood strongly by my belief, which is a belief, and I'm willing to let it be shaken, but I keep seeing evidence that stories matter, and I keep seeing absolutely no evidence that stories don't matter. I keep seeing people, real people, self-report about themselves that Mushoku Tensei had a general positive effect on their life. How is that possible? I mean, really, how is that possible? Because you can watch someone, like a real person, who's way better than you at everything, you can watch them and dismiss everything that they've said. But somehow you can watch RUDY, you probably view RUDY as way worse than you. In terms of his starting point, he's probably way worse than you. And you can watch him and hear his ideas, and somehow they incept themselves into the back of your brain and can actually change your behavior. For some people, for some people, that's not going to happen. You're just not going to have the association with RUDY, or the lessons he's learning are things you've already learned and already know, and so they seem obvious. But to the people to whom this matters, RUDY's lessons are revelatory. The things that RUDY comes to, the conclusions that he draws, and therefore the ones that you draw while watching him, are conclusions that some people could never have reached on their own, or might have taken 2 decades to reach on their own. By that time they might be 40 and a NEET and not have figured it out. So there's something valuable in watching somebody else figure it out, because if it lets you figure it out 20 years early, you don't waste 20 fucking years. So if I can help you figure out what I just saw in Mushoku Tensei, what is actually there, what is fundamental, and why it matters, why it speaks to you in the way that, like, the Hercules myth speaks to people and has spoken to people for thousands of years, or the myth of Perseus going and getting fire, or is it Perseus? I forget. Going and getting fire and then being tortured for it for eternity, or how about the religious myth of you might hate me for saying this, how about the religious mythology of Jesus Christ, who is the best in every way, utterly self-sacrificing, and is then punished in the worst way for it? Well, how does that make sense? I don't know, but it does make sense to people, and it does cause change, good and bad. Millions of people have died for Christian ideals, in good ways and bad ways. There have been crusades and horrible acts of violence and vengeance. There have also been functional societies built upon some of the bases of those ideals. Some of them. There's give and take here, but these mythological stories, believing that they don't have an impact on you or that they are just entertainment, is foolhardy. It is foolhardy, and it makes you manipulable. If you don't actively know that the stories you're watching are changing you every time you watch them, then you are capable of consuming and shitting out garbage. And you will do that continuously and unawarely, without any awareness. You will shit more garbage out into the world, and it is the last fucking thing we need, because the world is fucking choking with literal garbage. Emotional, intellectual, physical, and plastic. Garbage everywhere. We don't need you to be creating more of it. So we need you to be thinking properly, not consuming garbage. Or when you consume garbage, know enough to puke it back up. But the important thing, I'm not going to be able to judge for you what is and is not garbage. I'll do my best. It's part of my goal. But I'm not going to be able to judge that for you. You have to judge for yourself, which means you need your own sort of truth. But in order to get there, you need to know that something is worth judging, that media matters, that what you watch is important, that the stories you consume affect you. Fundamentally, they change the way you see the world. And if you change the way you see the world, you change your behavior. Your behavior is different when you have a blindfold on than when you don't have a blindfold on. Always, because you can see. So let's get you seeing. Okay, not that I would claim to be able to see. I feel more blind than ever. The more I feel like I can see, the more I feel like I am blind. The more you know, the more you realize that you know nothing. I'm not trying to be arrogant here. I'm trying to be helpful. Okay? I love you. Okay, great. Let's go through the fundamental beginnings of Mushoku Tensei. Death. Suffering. Okay, what is our first frame? This is our first frame. It is suffering. Welcome to the state of being. This is how I think that the first frame of any show should be. The first frame of any show should express the current state of existence. The current state of existence for this human being is, for the previous person who's unnamed, the current state of existence is pain. That seems relevant. That seems accurate, because one could say from a very Buddhist perspective, and I think this is a truth that I agree with, that all of us are suffering to various degrees. Pain is the nature of existence. Rudy is in the most pain right now because he is archetypal. This is the most pain, the pain of death. The pain of death with nobody who cares about you. The pain of death for seemingly no reason. The pain of death alone, with others watching and judging you. Leaving society behind, having done nothing. Welcome to the Great Fear. This is the landscape of existence. This is Rudy's place. This is who he is, where he is, what is going on. And we have his thoughts as well. Did those three make it out okay? Tells us who he is. This is all just explicit stuff. These are the specifics. They don't matter. Recluse for 20 years, bangs on the floor for food. Okay, what's the next state of existence? It's the unknown. It's the unclear. It's movement through this rain, right? What does this look like? This rain falling? It doesn't look like rain. This looks like hyperspace. This looks like Star Trek, we're going to warp, or Star Wars, we're going to warp, right? We are going at a rate faster than we can determine to somewhere else. This is metaphorical more than it's physical. Why do I say this? He's literally looking up at the rain, but visually that's not what's going on here. What's going on here? Death in a story is not death. Specifically, death in an isekai story is not death. Rudy, as a character, I mean, functionally he's dead, right? We get it. That's the literal layer, but that's not what's going on. Because we don't come back after death, as far as we know. You know what we do come back after? The realization that our way of being is flawed, okay? So imagine yourself in Rudy's place. First of all, Rudy, pre-Rudy, is an archetype. What is his archetype? He is the worst person. Now, you can disagree about the prospect here, but from the perspective of the author, and what the author is trying to get at, and what Japanese society might believe, Rudius is the worst kind of person. You want to know why? Let's give you some layers. Socially, he doesn't have a social life, he disrespects his family, and he doesn't speak to anyone. Economically, he doesn't contribute, he only consumes. Both of these are considered great sins in most cultures, but especially in the Japanese salaryman culture. Great sins. He's a great sinner. Pedophile. Hi, it's the morning after I recorded and edited this whole long-ass video, and I'm going back through it to grab timestamps, and now I'm ending up re-editing it, because I recognize that some of the concepts and some of the ideas that I present here, I need to do so with great care, and so I'm editing through it. And so I want to make a disclaimer here, because this is, I think, the first time the word pedophile comes up in this video, and I think that throughout the video, I and most people in the discourse may be using the word technically incorrectly in a way that makes it harder to parse the truth. And this is not to say that I know what the truth is right now, nor that I am going to give it to you immediately, but because of some of the conclusions that I came to in this video, I have started actively researching the nature of what we know and what we've researched, which is not very much, unfortunately, which is really scary to me, what we know and what we have actually researched where there is evidentiary backing for any information about pedophilia, hebephilia, interest in lolicon, things like this, studies here in the United States where I am and studies abroad. And I'm finding that there aren't that many studies, but there are some things that I have fundamentally wrong about my perspective. And those fundamentally wrong things, I think, are generated by the general discourse and by my internalized fear of looking at the thing, which I think is a core concept that we're going to get to as we move forward in the video. I'll let myself from the past try to do most of the legwork of expressing it, but I want to clarify something. I have to be really clear with saying this. It's such a tough thought, and I can't even get close to it, really. Dismissing all information about something as scary and seriously wrong as pedophilia makes sense because it is scary and wrong. But going and seeking out that information is the way to arm oneself against it and against those who might argue for it, because those people exist, and against those who might argue about it in insincere ways. So, truth and understanding, even when it's scary and it feels wrong, is very important. And I have some theories about why looking toward even information about such a heinous and horrible act, I have theories about why that might be stressful or difficult as I'm observing myself go through the stress and difficulty of attempting to find out more about this obviously difficult topic that we all have a lot of trouble talking about. So I'm trying to figure out why that is, because that seems kind of interesting. And what I'm trying to say here, in hindsight, after a couple hours of extemporaneous speech to a camera yesterday, is that some of my speech is not as careful as it should be, and I'm apologizing for that in advance and qualifying it, and I'm sorry. But please take it with many grains of salt, because I'm wrong about a bunch of stuff, and I hope to become much more right about those things and express them to you in the future. So stick around for the future if you're interested in finding out what's going on here, because I'm interested in finding out what's really going on here. And while it might seem like I'm interested in just expressing what some ideal or some belief and trying to convince you of it, that's really not what's going on. It's that I am expressing what I've found and think, and hoping that somebody will, either agree with me or criticize me or think about it, and that we can have some discourse. So here's that. Thanks. I'll let past me take over. Pedophile. Why? I've been thinking about this all week. I realize why it is. We've been spending, and why it brings up so much discussion, because people are trying to figure out the specifics of it, because they can't wrap their heads around the real core truth of it, which is, why is Rudy a pedophile? It's not because the character is a pedophile. It doesn't matter what the character is. What matters is that he is supremely unforgivable, irredeemable, that he is the worst. Not just a pedophile, right? Because in the web novel, we know, because this story has been revised before, and that's important. The ideas here are important enough that they deserve revision. They deserve to be as close to accurate as they can be. It's worth it for Rifujin to take one step back, realign by at 0.1%, and then go again, because he knows that the ideas that he's trying to express are too complicated to fuck up. They're too complicated. So why is Rudy a pedophile? Because it is the worst thing you can be. It is the unforgivable. It is worse than being a rapist. To harm a child is worse than harming an adult. To harm an adult, to rape, kill, murder an adult is one thing. You'll get thrown into prison. But if you rape or kill a child and you get thrown into prison, you're not going to last very long. The other prisoners, no matter how evil they are going to tear you apart. Partly because it's the worst thing you can be. Partly because a lot of them were hurt or abused when they were kids. Your monstrosity, if you're a fucking pedophile, is worse than anyone. It is the unforgivable. That's why it's Rudy, because this is a story about redemption. Not necessarily forgiveness, but redemption, a second chance, okay? So what is the story saying? It's saying, if you're doing wrong and you die, and you realize that what you're doing is wrong, when you realize that how you're acting in the world is wrong, you die. Because you are a set of structures and behaviors that you think will work to get you what you want. If you come to a breaking point and you realize the way you're acting does not get you closer to what you want, or it causes harm in a way that you didn't want, you need to destroy your entire perceptual structure. The entire judgment set that you use to evaluate the world and yourself and your actions within the world is flawed. That is painful. It's about as painful as getting run over by a truck. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like the world is barreling on and you go, the world is this way, and it goes, and you go, ow, the world isn't that way, and you get crushed and mangled and bashed and battered and smushed and crashed, and you are a destroyed thing. You don't exist anymore, and you go somewhere else. You're not yourself anymore, and you're not in a safe explored space anymore. You go somewhere else. So when we travel through this hyperdrive, we're traveling to somewhere else. And this darkness that we're in is the darkness of feeling, oh shit, everything that I've been doing for my whole life is wrong. It doesn't work. I cannot continue this way. This cannot continue. This cannot continue. It's like, you ever have an ache in your back, and it's just sitting there, and you're like, oh, that hurts a little bit, that hurts a little bit, and then one day it becomes like, it's agony, and you have to go and you have to massage it, or like it becomes the most pain, and you cannot do anything else until you've dealt with this problem. That's Rudy. He's been living this 30-year existence with an ache on his back. That ache is something along the lines of, the way I'm acting doesn't work. I want certain things, and the way that I'm acting doesn't get them for me. I'm capable of keeping myself sated, right, with porn and jerking off and the food that I get and entertainment and media. I'm capable of staying sated, but I am not satisfied. Something is missing. I have to change. I'm not good enough. And as soon as you realize I'm not good enough, bam, you're dead. Welcome to the underworld. Go back to the Kill la Kill video. You'll watch the exact same process exhibited through the Kill la Kill video. Bam, back to the underworld. Welcome to darkness. Welcome to the unknown. Your pain within the unknown unlocks your ability to be honest. Your honesty serves as as armor. Armed with honesty and the sword of truth, you can then return to the overworld and fight whatever it is you're fighting against, whatever corruption it is that led you to the state of not being proper in the first place. Excellent. Awesome. Okay. So Rudy, the reason that Rudy's an incestuous pedophile. Think about that, right? Why? If you were going to write a story about somebody who was kind of bad, just like kind of bad, and then they got kind of better, why would you choose incest pedo? You wouldn't. If you wanted to make a relatable character, you would never. Maybe sex pervert. Likes bondage. You know, like, that's the sin. But that's not a sin, right? That's not wrong. Maybe somebody who's just a jerk, right? Okay, sure. Somebody who's like a little bit of an asshole. No. If you're going to tell a mythological story, you need mythological stakes, right? Zeus is a fucking horror rapist who turns into ducks and rapes people. Like, what the fuck? You know, when we tell these mythological stories, they are the worst and the best. Jesus Christ. Again, it's a mythological story. I don't believe in religion. I believe in some, like, ideas of religion. I don't believe in religions. Okay? So, to be clear, from a secular perspective, Jesus Christ narratively is the most self-sacrificing, and he is given the worst punishment. He's put up on a cross, and it's visceral, and we go through it step by step, and we demonstrate the pain, and we talk about it. Why? It's so that you feel it. It's so that you feel it, and you imagine in your mind what it must feel like to give up something like that. And then you go, well, if somebody could sacrifice that, then maybe I could sacrifice an hour of my time to clean my room once a week. And that might make my world better. Or maybe I could sacrifice 30 minutes a day to make lunch for my kid, and that might make the world better. The sacrifice might lead to feeding the masses, right? Like, there's an idea there. There's an idea there. And it's only because it's presented in such grandiose terms that it has any impact. Similarly with RUDY. RUDY is the worst. Why? So that you, the slightly bad, the person who maybe is jerking off to lolicon, you know? Maybe you are. I'm gonna be super honest with you guys coming up in the future. I'm gonna be super honest moving into the future. And it's gonna be painful for you and painful for me, and I'm sorry. I have jerked it to lolis. It felt bad. Not because somebody told me that it was bad, but because I felt like it was bad. I'm gonna take a stance on this one. I've avoided taking a stance on this one. I think lolicon porn is wrong. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with it. And we can argue the nuance of that. That's fine. I'm super willing to, as long as we argue it in good faith. But I've come to the conclusion for myself that I don't want that shit in my brain anymore. Because it changes the way that I view people. And women. And humans. And children. It changes all of that. And that's not good. It's not good. And so I'm not going to throw it out with the bathwater anymore and just say, like, that's wrong and bad and nobody should ever. I'm gonna look at it, and I've spent some time looking at it, not looking at it, well, actually, yes, looking at it, and investigating it a little bit more carefully, and going, what does this actually do to my brain? And the answer is, it's not good. It's not good. But my point is not that. My point is this. If you're sitting in your room just jerking, let's be a little nicer to you, okay? You're sitting in your room, jerking off, not doing what you should be. That's the only thing that you're doing. Maybe you're not doing something wrong. You're just not doing something right either. How about that? That seems much more approachable to me. That person who feels like they're not doing something wrong but not doing something right might feel like they're doing something impossibly wrong. Like irredeemable and unforgivable. And, you know, they might have parents who are like, if you don't focus on nothing but school, you're gonna die. And we're gonna disown you. And we're gonna hate you. And so you're sitting there playing video games and going, I should be working on school. Fuck, I'm an irredeemable fool. I mean, maybe, but if you have the grounding of a story like Rudius's, you might be able to go, if Rudy is the worst thing, and he can have a second chance, then maybe I could change too. Then maybe it's possible for me, because he's that bad. And I'm not that bad. I get to look down at him. I'm looking down at him, but even he made a positive change in his life, and I can't do that. Somebody in the previous video wrote something along the lines of, makes me feel like I'm worse than an anime character, and that's unacceptable. And so I started getting my shit together. Boom! Exactly. Exactly. If you look at Rudy and you have disgust for him, but then you realize that he's working towards something better and you're not, uh-oh, there's a mismatch there. Maybe enough of a mismatch to cause you to go through your own self-death to really evaluate where you're at and what you're doing and whether you should be changing it. Because if he's that bad and he can get girls and friends and learning and knowledge and respect and power just by changing his perspective, which is what has happened, a whole new world opens up to Rudy after his fundamental structures are destroyed. After his being is destroyed, he has to let everything go, and then he is reborn into a world of endless possibility, with himself as a new person who contains the wisdom of his old self and the lessons that his old self has learned, but is moving through the world with a new perspective and new opportunity, almost like a newly born child in a completely new world, a world that contains magical things beyond his wildest imagination, a world that is, in truth, the things that he was experiencing in video games in fiction. A dream world that is not a dream. Because once you recognize your own insufficiencies, your dreams can become reality. That is truth. I believe that. I believe it is true. I believe that the world is different for you depending on your perspective. I believe that's fundamental, like quantum physics stuff. Because you are the observer, the way in which you observe shapes your reality. If you change your perspective, you can change your behavior. If you change your perspective and your behavior, the entire world self-articulates around you. Everything will change. If you feel emotionally connected to me right now, that's proof of it. I'm articulating myself as effectively as I can. I'm showing you my perspective on the world around me, and we're forming a real connection because of it. That's power. That's truth. That's real. That's change. That's possible. Believe it. Date bayo. Believe it, says Naruto, and millions of people do, and they wear Naruto headbands and Naruto shirts, and their lives are different because of what they believe. Okay. Death. Removal from the scientific world, the rational world, the present world, the world that Rudy has grown up in. Welcome to the world of imagination and ideas, the landscape of human connection. The father, the mother, the flawed, the beautiful, the potential for new perspective and new viewpoints, colored by your own perspective, right? A new perspective, beautiful, beautiful people, family, connection, but also taters. You have not changed completely, because nobody ever changes completely. No chance. Welcome to this world. And so we see him maneuver through this landscape, interact with people, look out beyond, and eventually come to grips with his failings, discover the possibilities of the world through Zenith's magic, discover that this is another place and that the possibilities here are endless, and start seeking actively for something that is useful. Magic, information, knowledge, power. Seek it out on your own, because when you change your perspective on what matters, you will seek what you believe matters. You won't have to force yourself. If you can change your worldview to make yourself really believe that school is really the best way for you to achieve your truly deeply held goals, whatever those deeply held goals are, there will be no friction between you and going to school. How do I know this? I know this because I spent 4 years getting a computer science degree, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Why? Because I had a monkey on my back the entire time that was saying, this isn't actually what you're wanting out of life. This isn't actually the thing you should be doing. How do I know the difference? Because I know that when I switched to actually pursuing what I want, which is finding meaning in media and art, I started going and buying books on my own about the topic and reading them. Like that book over there, Framed Ink by Marcus Mateo Mestre. A book that essentially says that you can change what people feel based on the way you present ideas in media. Or the book that's under it, Maps of Meaning, which says that the way that you feel and think can be changed by the things that you read and watch. Combine those two things together, and you realize that if you change what you care about, you will seek out the information that leads you there. I've learned more in my self-study over the past couple of years than I could have possibly learned doing and studying something that I wasn't interested in. Because the brain is resistant to things you're not interested in. Rudy changes his perspective, and suddenly he is self-determining his own study. Somebody has mentioned, by the way, that they got him tutoring and stuff, but they really didn't. They just got the help, quote, the help of Paul reading to me sometimes. He learns how to read. This kid learns to read on his own. He goes and does and seeks out one of the most difficult things that a human can do, which is learn a new language. Of course, he's young, so it's easier. He does it on his own. Why? Because his perspective has changed. If he were just old Rudy in a new body, he wouldn't do this, because he was still the same person, and he'd still be chasing after arrogay bitches and porn idols and stuff. The magic manual. He starts learning about power and his ability to reshape the world. That's what this is, right? You know, I had a friend ask me, we were talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender. He said, I do find it really appealing, this idea of being an earthbender, being a waterbender, being able to shape reality around you. And I just gave him this sort of dumbfounded This dumbfounded, this is 0 milligram nicotine, no nicotine juice, by the way. Just letting you know, I'm still off of the juice. I'm still off of the nicotine. I'm allowing myself the physical habit because it's harder to kick, and it's much more satisfying to be able to perform the physical habit without the nicotine. Otherwise, I might fall off the wagon, and that's totally okay, okay? We make leeway for ourselves while we move toward important goals. Good. And when my friend turned to me and said, wow, that would be really cool. I've always wished that I could earthbend, firebend, waterbend, airbend, all these things. And I gave him this sort of dumbfounded look like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why? Well, because you can. Because humans are airbenders, earthbenders, firebenders, waterbenders. Like, duh. Like, duh. We can take a river that goes this way and make it go this way. That's waterbending. We can take a mountain and we can level it. That's earthbending. We can manipulate and move air. We can fly and steal tubes. That's airbending. And firebending, you want to talk about firebending? We have mastered fire. Electricity is fire, right? We use fire to heat up, in most cases. We use fire to heat up steam to run a turbine to generate electricity. Electricity transfers that power over distances and can be used universally. Your lights are fire. The fact that I'm speaking to you is a manifestation of our mastery of fire. We are firebenders. We are airbenders, earthbenders, waterbenders, and firebenders, and that is all one grand tradition that has been passed down from generation to generation as knowledge and wisdom. How do you use those things in the most effective way is essentially the avatar state. Or really, the avatar state is the point at which you realize that you are not capable of handling all of the power that you have been and responsibility that you've been granted right now. You know, I'm one person. I'm not capable of carrying the weight of all of humanity. I can't do it. So how do I deal with that? Well, I ask other people for help, and I look to the wisdom of my forebears who've had to carry that weight as well. And in that wisdom, I find the solace that I need to be able to carry some piece of it. You know? This is correct. This is the truth. I think these things are inarguable. I think they are self-evident, to use some constitutional logic. So what is RUDY doing as he explores this new world? He's exploring the fact that in his new, honest state, where he has recognized his insufficiencies and is willing to change his behaviors. That is the state of the hero, by the way. Willingness, recognize insufficiency, willing to change behaviors. He tries, he reaches out for power, and power explodes from him, shockingly. Isn't that interesting? And he's shocked by it, he steps back. Whoa! But he's also thrilled by it, right? Whoa, what the fuck? It's like as if, you know, in the classic anime logic, as if you reach out for the thing that's beyond you and grasp it, and suddenly it's there and you have it. Why is that the anime scene? You reach out for something and you grasp it, and then suddenly it's there and you have the thing that you needed. Because that seems to be how humans work. You stagnate, you stagnate, you stagnate. As soon as you recognize that you are stagnating, that you are insufficient, that you are lacking something, and you begin to reach for it, it's there. The process of reaching for something new is the thing that you were reaching for in the first place in many cases. So RUDY reaches for power, magic, expression, the ability to create, however you want to put it. Now, what is this metaphorically? What is magic, right? I think it's speech. I think the power that is truth, the power that is magic amongst people is the power to speak the truth. Is to see the truth and to speak the truth, to divine the difference between the two and to speak it out to the world. Magic must be true. Why must you make an incantation? Because it must be correct. Why must you do a ritual? Because tradition is part of what is correct. And he associates it with practicing combos in a fighter, and he's right. It's the same idea. When you go into a fighting game, you know, I play Super Smash Bros. Melee. Let me grab that. Boom. I play Super Smash Bros. Melee. There is only one way to get good at Super Smash Bros. Melee. There's only one. Now, there are a dozen ways to get better, but there's only one way to get good. You can get better by watching people. You can get better by practicing alone. You can get better by practicing in, like, pretty technologically advanced ways, where we've got, like, 20XX training pack and things like that. They put up training seminars, so essentially doing shadow boxing, where you can practice that way. You can train your reaction time and get, like, physically faster. But you will never, and you can fight against bots, robots, right? CPUs. But you will never, ever get good until you fight against people who are better than you and you lose a bunch of times. because you have to get it drilled into your body and mind that you're not good enough. And then once you do that, all your practice starts to actually pay off. Before you do that, the practice levels off and stops growing. After you do that, your practice becomes purposeful because you've been beaten, because you've recognized your failings. So fighting games, bringing them up is important because the skills you learn in practicing for a fighting game are the skills you need for life. I also think that I'm going to do an analysis of the Dark Souls games. I think that they're the most psychologically important set of pieces of media that might have come out in the last couple of decades. I think they're actually life-changing for millions of people, which is crazy to think, but I really do believe that Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, and Bloodborne are and to some extent, Nioh and the other ones are to some extent the most important artifacts of modern culture in terms of how much effect they have had on specific young men and changing the way that they view the world. There's something to the combat loop of Dark Souls that fundamentally alters the psychological structure of a person, I think. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about literally anything. This guy could be purple. I don't fucking know. But I'm pretty sure that the Dark Souls and Souls-like and Soulsborne games are actually important. They're actually important. Anyway, let's move along. Practicing the thing, concentrate and do it. You find out that that wasn't a fluke. If you put your mind to expressing yourself and expressing power again, you can do it. Oh, that's the other thing. Sorry, I was saying speech is power. Honesty is power. Because magic is the thing that people always look at RUDY for. They're like, whoa, cool. But it is his speech to other people that always influences them the most, right? Now, physically, power is power, and magic is also an emblem of fighting and the ability to defend yourself and the ability to not just get trod over like a doormat, which is some of what RUDY did in his past life, right? That's the ability. It's the ability to have thorns. It's being a bit of a hedgehog. It's being a little bit dangerous. It's all of those things as well. Because of course it is, because dense texts are dense, potentially inexhaustibly dense. Potentially there are so many layers of meaning to a sufficiently dense text that you can never unpack it. I don't think that's true for Mushoku. I think it is dense enough to be really appealing and intriguing, but I don't think it's inexhaustible in the way that the stories of the Buddha are inexhaustible, or that biblical narratives have inexhaustible value to them, even if that value is fundamentally flawed in lots of ways. Okay, great. Can we agree that there are many sides to everything? Good. And he gets tired, and you can only practice being powerful every once in a while. And then here we've got this, right? Dealing with your own embarrassment within the family dynamic. As you seek out what is difficult, you get embarrassed by it. It's pretty fucking cool. And you discover that what's in the book isn't exactly what is true, right? It's close and it got you to where you need it to be, but there are things that you have to discover on your own. This is a fundamental truth. It's something I said in the last in the comment spotlight. You can go and read 20 self-help books, and they will it doesn't go into your brain. But you think up an idea yourself that you've read 20 times in those self-help books, but you feel like you thought it yourself, and it's in your brain forever, and it changes the way that you think, and your worldview shifts dramatically. This is true. How many lessons from your parents did you ignore throughout your adolescence? If you're 25 or more, okay? How many lessons from your parents did you ignore throughout your adolescence? And then you hit 25, 26, 27, 28, and you went, oh shit, that is the core fundamental of everything about existence. How many? How many of you have that experience? Because I do, right? How many of you dismissed something that your parents told you over and over? Mostly you dismissed it because it was from your parents, or specifically from outside of yourself. And then it comes one day, you come to the conclusion yourself from within yourself, from a different perspective, and everything clicks and you go oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Of course it's true. And you're yeah, my dad's still wrong about it in some ways, and he was wrong about the way he tried to teach it to me, but I guess the fundamental thing is right. Damn, I wish I'd listened. But it's not that you didn't listen, it's that you could not hear it. Because the book is always wrong, the transfer of information is always imperfect, and because there's something about having the thought yourself, getting to it yourself, that changes the way that it works. That is revelatory. Pretty fucking interesting. That doesn't mean it's not worthwhile to write books that explain important thoughts, because those important thoughts do incept themselves into people's brains, and a year or two later, they'll have the thought on their own, but they would have never had the thought if you didn't write the book. So you gotta write the book, okay? Great. religion and stuff, becoming a part of this society, experience, incantations, the sex of the mother and father. This is all, again, we're in episode 1, we're expressing the landscape of our familial existence and doing massive contrast between the previous familial existence. There is golden light here in every scene. You know what do I mean? This is golden hour lighting, candlelight, good stuff, or natural sunlight, right? Calming, warm, inviting, familial, not the way that it was before. The world has changed. The world has changed. And Rudy is using the change to explore his own limitations. And he's also coming up with stupid ideas. Maybe I'm unique and special. If this is true, there's only one thing to do. Train as much as I can while I'm still growing. He's coming to the right conclusions for new reasons, because he's willing to look at the possibility that he's wrong. We discover the landscape sexually of this world. Paul is our male role model, the only one we have. And to many extents, he's a better role model than what Rudy was looking at in the previous world. I mean, he's at least, he's not a NEET. He has a job. He's working. He has a sword and he knows how to wield it. He has respect from his wife and from the rest of the opposite gender. He's doing something right. He's viewed as sexy. He's an attractive mate. He's a functioning part of society. But he's also a flawed human with rapacious desires who has, in the past, been unable to control them. And even in the present finds himself sometimes unable to control them. Because he's human. Like a parent. Like a real father. Like the way that a relationship with a real father should be. Which is not to view them as some god on high. It is to view them as a person who might know more than you do on a lot of things. And is definitely stronger than you are. And can definitely beat you down. And can definitely make unfair seeming determinations about your future. Like bonking you on the head and throwing you into a cart with Ghislaine. Fathers can do that. Your dad can send you to military school and you can't do anything about it. This is true. This is the way it is, at least in America. This is the way it is. Your father could also teach you a bunch of moral lessons, and then you could find out that he raped a woman when he was young. Or you could be like me and have a father who taught you, or tried to teach you, that porn is wrong and rotting your mind. And then you go into his room and you find a big stash of porn DVDs. And suddenly there's a hypocritical contradiction there. That seems right. That seems correct. If your eyes are open, your father is both somebody to respect and somebody to be careful of, because they're not perfect. You're going to view them as perfect for a while, and then you're going to find out it ain't true. That's going to be pretty interesting when it happens. Okay, so he tries the more advanced magic, and he blows the hell out of the wall. This is pretty much correct, right? This is also metaphorically a correct thing to do. So you discovered a little bit of power. You realize that by speaking, you can hurt people. Okay. That's a good one for our modern day. You realize that speech can cause harm. Or that, more accurately, that speech has power. Now you start to use it to cause harm and inflict power. Are you actually capable and ready of controlling what you're about to unleash? No. And I think this is accurate. Pretty much any time that somebody finds a new avenue of expression or whatever, they go too far almost immediately. Because we express things that way. We find out where our boundaries are. Children especially. If a 2-year-old figures out that he can hit people, he will explore the realm of hitting people until he discovers whether it works or not. So it's really important that he discovers that it doesn't work. And Rudy, in this moment, discovers that, well, it works, but it caused a problem. Right? Wow, that was powerful. But oops, that had repercussions. So, if you discover speech has power, and then you go and somebody does something that you don't like, you call them a slur. Or you attack them personally because of it. You've done something, you've realized that you've had power. But then you realize that you also caused harm. Because once you've called them that slur, the dynamic of the conversation changes. And you'll catch yourself if you do this, because you'll immediately go, oh, whoops. You know? Or you're conversing with somebody and you're yelling about something, and then you bring up their mom and you've gone too far, right? You've tested where that boundary is and you just pushed it. You've become destructive. Power creates all this water, it creates this bead, it's power, he can shape it and direct it, but then it destroys because he's not in control of it. Gotta be really careful with the power that you express. Awesome. Was it a monster? No, there aren't any monsters, which is great, and leads this thing. Hey, did you read this? You are special. Actually, I think this is a great archetypal moment too. This is a great moment. You've been caught doing something that maybe you should and maybe you shouldn't have done. This happens in movies all the time, right? You're in a tension point. Do you admit the truth that you did the thing, or do you lie and say that you didn't do the thing because you don't know what the repercussion will be? The answer is you admit the truth. And the answer is that in that scene, usually, if the scene is well constructed, you are rewarded for admitting the truth. Even if it's scary. So Rudy's scared in this situation. His mom is looking at him and he's like, oh God, am I going to get institutionalized? Is something wrong going to happen? So he admits it, and it's joyous. And so he learns just a little bit, just a teensy tiny bit, that maybe admitting the truth will work. Maybe following what I actually want will work. Now that's probably in direct opposition with his real world, right? With his real world experience. Because in his real Japanese world, like many Japanese youths, he probably was in his head going, I want to become a game designer or an animator or a mangaka, you know, something creative and interesting that speaks to his passions and desires or whatever. And probably, if there were a circumstance where, let's say his father found a booklet of drawings that he had made, okay, and confronts him at the dinner table about it, son, I see that you've made all these drawings. Tell me what's going on. Probably, the circumstance would be such that if he went, I want to become an artist, Dad, his dad would say, fuck you, get out of my house, and there would be no support there. That's not correct, right? That's not the right process. That's not how it should be. And so, in the right place, the world of things that are correct, which is this world, the world that Rudy is in, is a world that works the way that you would expect it to many extents. It's going to have its own flaws, but it's a real world, even though it's fantasy. It's a fantasy of a real world where things work properly, where families exist and they work, right? It's a fantasy. It's a dreamland. It's utopia. That's okay. In this world where things work properly, admitting what you want to pursue and your passions is greeted by joy. This is the state of the proper family as well. This is the state of the proper family as well. Maybe there should be some trepidation here as well, right? Which is like, okay, so, you know, think about this. You're a parent with a son, and your son goes, Dad, I really want to become an actor. I want it more than anything. And your brain goes, fuck, my son wants to become an actor. He's going to be starving for his entire life. And so your conclusion is to go, that's stupid, kid. Don't become an actor. Do something that'll get you a real job so that you can survive. And then once you've survived, maybe you can consider becoming an actor. But that's ass backward. The kid is always going to have that monkey on his back going, you should be studying acting. You should be doing what you're supposed to be doing right now. You're not following the truth. You're lying to yourself. And that lie, that core fundamental lie, echoes to every aspect of your being, and it leads to pure and constant and consistent dissatisfaction. You have to be aligned with it. The good father, the correct family, the right family goes, kid, you want to be an actor? That's dangerous. Be aware of the dangers that you are submitting yourself to. There is every possibility that you will fail. There is every possibility that nobody will think you're any good. There's every possibility that you might be brilliant and nobody will care. There's every possibility that this will be worth it for you and you will starve and you won't be able to survive and you'll have to do something else and you'll have to compromise your ideals. There is every possibility also, my son, beloved, that you will succeed. I believe in you. Go for it. I will support you in every way that I can, and I will help you if you cannot do it. But I expect you to determine this path and get there yourself. I will support you and I'll help you, but you need to figure out where you're going and how you're going to get there. Go. Go. You push them out the door. Go ahead, kid. Try it. Fall flat on your face. Give them this. First off, set up a household and don't leave it behind. A home base for your family. A place that's yours, that's safe, that's real. And then say, kid, go. Do what you must. Discover. Learn from the world out there. See if it's where you need to be. Be willing to recognize if it isn't. And if it isn't, you can come back here when you need to figure stuff out. You'll always have a place to rest your head. This is your family home. This is your home base. This is also a little bit of a safety net. And with that safety net in place, I implore you, go risk it all. Go and risk everything. Because you're going to regret it forever if you don't. But there is risk. That's the good father's perspective. Go. Do it. Be. But beware. There are monsters in the forest. Beware. There are monsters in the forest. But yes, pursue what you need to pursue. Excellent. And there's going to be reluctance there. Okay? You come to your dad and you say, the kid comes to you and says, I'm going to be an artist. And you're going, but kiddo, I'm a plumber. You're going to be a plumber and take over my plumbing business. What the fuck are you talking about? This is the way. No, bud, it's your way. Give your kid the freedom. Give your kid the freedom to fail. To choose something else and fail. And maybe, if you examine it wholly, it might be true that your reluctance to allow the kid to fail is because of your own fear of failure. And you might go back and examine and discover that your own fear of failure is the reason that you're a plumber and not an artist or a writer or a musician. That is true for my father. In fact, I just realized it. Wow. My father let his ideals die in order to survive. And then he tried to instill the new ideals that he had gained after his ideals died into me, while I pursued the ideals that he held before they had died, because he believed they couldn't work, and I believe they can. My father's an endlessly creative person who was always very afraid of fame and of showing himself to the world. Probably is the reason why I am doing the exact opposite, right? Because you rebel against your father, and you go and you find what's correct, and you bring it back together, and you form some kind of incorporated combination of the two perspectives that are nearly diametrically opposed, but oddly that contradiction creates the truth. And the truth is somewhere in there, right? Like, yeah, my dad was fully right. Work is the meaning of life. Yep, that makes sense. But he was also wrong. You should not be sacrificing your guitar playing or your writing or your other skills or the things that you actually care about in order to survive. Because that makes you just survive, not live. And living is worthwhile and surviving isn't. Simple. So there might be some reluctance in you. You might go, kid, you're supposed to become a plumber. And it is your job to put that away. And it is the family around you's job to convince you otherwise. And so we see quite a healthy family dynamic here. And they come to a compromise. Magic in the afternoon, swordsmanship in the morning. And they come to a conclusion and they compromise and they come together. And love is here because they're able to compromise. Like, this is the way that the family should be, right? This is Rudy's world if everything could work. Enter the mentor. Roxy's the mentor. Roxy enters the thing. Roxy's also female. That's a huge thing for Rudy. Rudy's trying to grapple with the feminine. Has no idea how to grapple with the feminine. She fits archetypal grounds as well. She is mentor. She is reliable. You know, I think we get a line. And we get a line about her traits, right? She's also the approachable. Because she's not perfect. She's also approachable. She's a bit of an outcast herself. You know? Which is usually when you're a guy who's a bit of an outcast from society a little bit. You don't feel like you're a part of the great collective groove. You usually go after girls who are kind of outcasts in society, right? You don't go after the girl who like has a really good job and parties with her friends pretty frequently and has like a really collected social circle and has a bunch of other guys that she might date, right? And has options. You go after the girl who doesn't have any options, who's outcast from society, who's alone, who's nerdy, You know, kind of, I mean, to put it in some pretty disgusting terms, kind of like a group of wolves taking down the weakest deer or whatever, right? You go after the one that's split off from the group. Lowly, unsociable, right? That's the words we get in a moment. Maybe, okay, maybe lowly, unsociable, all that is maybe middle school age. Unsociable, sleepy-looking eyes, traits that equal perfection. Approachable, you know, relatively easy to get along with, probably not going to be judgmental of me, probably less likely to reject me because I'm flawed. I want to marry her. I want to connect with her. Well, she's an echo of the divine feminine, but as we move through, he's going to have to view her not as those things, but as a person. He's going to have to recognize that Roxy is actually a person. Yeah, doesn't like being outside, is uncomfortable being taught, is being put back into positions that echo bad things, is also deeply uncomfortable being around a woman, being around a girl. This is a pretty good depiction of a guy on a first date, actually. Yeah, there's something, she has something that you need, some information that you need to learn, but you're like fucking crazy, freaking out a little bit. No, it's not quite that, but that is a part of it. She shows him what's up, how it works, how to fix things when you fail them or break them. Shows a bunch of things. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do as much if they train properly. And he realizes that a little praise makes a person happy. He's figuring out the negotiated complexities of social interaction. He's figuring out that being nice to people works. These are things that are not well taught to people. They are not well taught to people in our modern society. Socialization happens less. And I don't just mean socializing in terms of interacting with other people. I mean the psychological process of socializing a child, of taking a child who is antisocial, who is unable of experiencing the world outside of them, who cannot negotiate a shared play space, who's broken, and fixing it. We're watching it happen to Rudy. Because he's allowed himself to break down, because he's shattered his own perceptual structures and allowed himself to become somebody new. That causes him to enter a new world with new options and new relationships, and he's exploring that space. It is the story of the person who realizes that something they're doing is wrong, they break down, they fall apart, they start putting themselves back together, and as they're starting to put themselves back together, they have a totally new perspective on the world. It's like the whole thing opens up to you, and it could be anything again. It's like you're a child once more. That's why Rudy's a child. It all tracks. It all tracks. Okay. There's one more thing that I want to leave off on, or I want to talk about. And, well, actually, there are two things. There are a couple things. So let's go to episode 8, because there's a thing that I made a mistake about in episode 8 that is very important to not make a mistake about. Bada bing, this moment. So here we are. Both of them are sitting on the bed, being all scared, okay? Rudy grabs her and goes, bam! Wham! Boom! Bam! Takes her down. Touches her pussy. And then is the moral good guy who goes, no! And stops himself, right? Okay, none of that was real. That was all a fantasy. It was all in Rudy's head. I didn't catch it. A lot of people on Discord caught it. I didn't catch it. A lot of people in the comments caught it. I didn't catch it. Addressed? Addressed. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Oh, it's just such a crazy moment that I fully didn't get it. It also makes sense why she gives him this look, because he's just sitting there for a few seconds imagining the perspective, right? Imagining the process. It's great. Okay. Also, this whole thing, once you put it into the metaphorical context, right, or the mythological context, the whole thing of like, first off, the first sexual assault, the first essay scene in the hayloft. This is part of the conversation that I had with Isfafel in the Discord. Can stories teach you things? And Isfafel said something along the lines of, quite specifically, I don't think that stories that try to teach men not to rape are good. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that you can teach something that fundamental in a story. And I apologize, Isfafel, if I've got your point wrong. That's my interpretation of what you said. Is that I don't think it's a good idea to teach these things because it can have like ulterior consequences, or it can cause bad things, or it can be weird, or it makes me feel uncomfortable. Whatever the reason is, I think that's the basic premise, is that stories can't or shouldn't teach ideas of that significance. or something. Something around that. I'm sorry if I didn't get it quite right. Feel free, if Isfafel puts a comment in the comment section, I will talk about it. I fundamentally disagree. I think that teaching young men not to rape people, if you can do it through stories, and I don't know that there's any proof that you can, except that there are many young men who have commented in my comments and are self-reporting that Mushoku Tensei has to some degree changed them and their perspective on people and the world, which seems like a good indicator. It's a small sample size, but it seems like an indicator to me. Combine that with the tension and vitriol that this show does get, whether it's overstated or understated or whatever, it does get it. Specifically these two scenes, this scene in this episode and the scene in episode 8, and some of the other things, the stealing of panties and some of the other sexual activities that RUDY goes through. Everything about all of the explanations that myself and others have given for why RUDY goes through this scene, why this scene is here, none of them feel correct to me. None of them quite answer the question. You know, they sort of, it's like when you have a mosquito bite and you scratch the itch and it's like, it's relief, but the itch is still there and it's going to take a little while and something more to make it go away. Okay, here's my proposal, and maybe it'll be Benadryl for that mosquito bite itch. Young men are taught in every society now, over and over and over, factually, the fundamental truth, which I agree with, that sexual assault is fundamentally wrong. Rape bad. Rape bad. Touching another person without their consent is wrong. It's evil. It's bad. It hurts people. We are taught this factually. The fact of it, all over the place. College, school, books, Reddit, Twitter, media, thinkers, politicians, every aspect of society says that the thing is true. Because the thing is true. Because it is. It is wrong to rape someone. Young men are taught this factually, but they are not taught it emotionally. Young women don't have to be taught it emotionally, for the most part. Women are, by and large, usually the victims of assault and rape. Not always. And I would posit women have a much easier time putting themselves in the role of the victim. Meaning, when you see in media a sequence of a rape, or you hear about a rape, the woman is much more likely to associate with the victim. Whereas the man is much more likely to associate with the perpetrator. Psychologically, because the perpetrator is male, usually. And also because men are, in our own heads, protagonistic. We are the actors. Sexually too. Like physiologically and sexually too. Men pursue, women attract. Women choose, men compete. Are these things right? I don't know. Are they true? They seem to be, to some extent. In some circumstances. I'll put all these qualifiers there, but they don't seem to be untrue. And so I won't deny them. I will not deny what I think is true. And especially, I will not deny what I think is true, because I'm afraid that it will associate me with ideas that I disagree with. If you think that what I'm saying associates me with ideas that are wrong, come at me. I'll argue with you. And I'll argue in good faith, and I hope you do too. And we can come to a real conclusion, and this isn't a threat. This isn't a threat, but it's serious, and you better come at me seriously. In good faith. Because I will tear you to shreds if you don't. I will tear you to fucking shreds because I know what I know, and I believe what I believe. And I'm willing to be wrong. But I need a better alternative before I'm willing to admit wrongness. And I haven't seen one. I think women are more likely to be capable of feeling like the victim and empathizing with them. And if you do that, you immediately go, oh God, I'm never doing that ever. And men are more likely to feel the power of dominance. The feeling of control. And fucking horny. Because we're all fucking horny. I think an uncomfortable scene. A scene where you are not RUDY in this moment. Where your perspective and the camera's perspective and Rudy's perspective should be misaligned. Intentionally. Uncomfortable. Intentionally. When you... Let's take a step back. I want to say something else that I think is really important. And it's going to hurt to accept this thing, but it is true. And if you come at arguing this one, you need to spend some real time thinking about it before you argue it, because I don't think it's false. I think it's really true. Really, really true. Most of the people watching this video are male. Not all of them, but most of them. Hello, lads, boys, guys. I want to say something to you. You, my friend, my ally. You are capable of rape. You could rape a person. You could. You are capable of it. I mean, really put yourself in the perspective. Put yourself in the point of view. This is gonna hurt. Close your eyes and imagine yourself doing it. Imagine what it would take for you to do it. Imagine how desperate you would have to be. Because I know that every guy here has masturbated to something and then felt guilty about it afterward. Every single one of you has done that, right? Your sexual desire has been so great that you did something you regretted later. Why? Because for most men, the craving for sex is as strong in some ways and as biologically defined as the craving for food. It feels, it's not, but it feels like a need. So, if you were put in a position where you were told day in and day out that sex is all that matters, that your only judgment, the only thing that judges you worthy is whether you are fucking lots of bitches, and you for 30 years have not ever fucked a bitch, but the society tells you that you are meaningless unless you do. Unless you do. You see how your self-worth, your very viewpoint on yourself in the world might start getting wrapped around sex? And how you might become willing to sacrifice the well-being of someone else for your own well-being? In the same way that people callously defeat others in competition, economically, socially, sexually, all the time. Because when you date a girl and you know there are other guys who want her, you are hurting all of them, and you have to deal with that. When you get a job and you know there are other people aiming for that job, you have to hurt all of them for your own desires. How much of a stretch is it to hurt one person to fulfill your own animal satisfaction? The answer is it is not that much of a stretch. The answer is you are capable of it. And if you cannot admit to that to yourself, you are far more dangerous than you believe. Because you think you are good, and you are not good until you recognize your capacity for evil. Until you realize that the temptation to assault, to fuck, can be carried out. Until you realize that it's possible, you are not in control of it. Virtue is never the absence of desire. Virtue is not the absence of desire. Let me say this again. Virtue is not the absence of desire. It is the ability to control. It is the presence of desire and the ability to control oneself. There would be no virtue in me quitting nicotine if I were never addicted to nicotine. There would be no virtue to me sitting here with this in my hand with 0 milligrams in it if it did not physically hurt me. I am in physical pain right now. My whole back and neck is a mess of tightness and cramps right now as I'm speaking to you because there is no nicotine in my system and it hurts me. It is virtuous that I am doing it anyway. I'm not trying to virtue signal here, but it is virtuous that I am doing it anyway because I crave it and I am saying no. You are the same. If you are any sort of hot-blooded male, I know there are exceptions. There are ace people. There are lots of people. If you are any sort of hot-blooded male, you crave sex. And you are in a constant war to act correctly in relation to your craving, to your craving for sexuality. Correct? Tell me that I'm wrong. That you're not in a constant struggle to keep from staring at that girl's ass when you see a hot girl. Because you know it's not right, and you know you'd be objectifying her, but your animal brain goes, big ass and titties! Every time. Every time. So, the virtue is controlling yourself, not having the desire. What is this scene? This is Rudy as not having the virtue either. He has the craving, he has the opportunity, he has the desire, and he doesn't have the self-control. And so, he tries to take her panties off. He tries to assault her. And because this world is the world where things work as they should, as we would hope that they would, he gets the shit kicked out of him because he knows that he's doing something wrong, and he is. And so the just punishment is that he is punished to some extent, because otherwise how will he learn? Somebody made a point about this, about corporal punishment. I'm generally not in favor of corporal punishment, but it's a perspective. And if I take it as a perspective, like if we just take punishment in terms of physical being is the same as you going, oops, that was dumb, because I do that to myself constantly, right? It's something that I've worked into my behavior, actually, and I realize that it's actually important to me. I will actively pat myself on the back and say good job when I do something that I think I did really well. And I will, like, when I finish recording a video, very often I'll go, all right, nice, we're done, let's go to editing, okay? And when I do something that I think is stupid, I will go, doy, right? It doesn't even hurt, but it's just like doy. It's a little motion that reinforces to me. It's like a facepalm. It reinforces to me that whatever I did was just stupid. In the context of the show, Eris kicking the shit out of Rudy is slapstick, and it doesn't have depth to it, but it works, right? It says that thing that was done gets punished. And this somewhat goes along with and goes against some of my ideas that I've presented before about the need or lack of need for karmic justice in media, but there is need for justice when a kid is learning. There is need for discipline and punishment. Punishment and discipline and reward are a part of the thing. And what we get is punishment and discipline and reward, right? The punishment and discipline is that Rudy gets the shit kicked out of him for trying to touch Eris in a way that she doesn't want to be touched. Bam, wham, boom, bam. But because this world works properly, in the best way that it could, we might say, now this doesn't mean it works realistically, because this world works in the best way that it could, when a person makes a mistake, that person is seemingly instantly forgiven. Right? Because in our world, if it were to work properly, and you made a mistake, you would get another chance. That isn't the truth of this world, of our real world, as pre-Rudy figured out, right? Because he made some mistakes and he never got more chances. At least that's how it feels. But in a real world where the chance is granted, this friendship doesn't die because you made a mistake. Now, maybe it gets a little bit tumultuous for a couple of days, and you sort of tiptoe around each other until you sit down and talk it out or something. But the friendship doesn't die because of it. The society doesn't fall apart because of it. Now, let's take a step back and say, in the real world, if a guy rapes a girl, probably, in my opinion, she should not remain friends with him, and probably shouldn't look at it as, oh, I guess he just made a mistake. But this isn't a guy, right? This is a metaphor. This is a myth. And in the myth, the person, in the heroic myth, the person who makes a bunch of mistakes keeps getting up afterward and keeps getting forgiven. Every time. Why? Well, because that's how we wish our lives worked. It would be the ideal. In fact, it is the way our lives work. It's the way that a lot of things in our lives work, right? You can go in and try out for a testing certification, and you can fail it, and you can go and try it next year. That's pretty cool. You can try a lot of the things in this world over and over. You know, if you don't get into college, you can actually try the next year. A lot of people don't, or think that they don't. They just give up. But you can. Or if you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing and you find it out at like 35, you can go back to school. Some of the coolest people I've ever met were like 40-year-olds who were back in my philosophy classes just taking classes for fun because they wanted to expand their consciousness. You can try again. In an ideal world, with ideal structures, you can always try again. Everything doesn't fall apart just because you gave in to one error. But in the real world, that's not the case. There are errors that you can make that cannot ever be forgiven. If you give in to desire and kill somebody, you're going to go to jail for a long, long time. If you give in to desire and you sexually assault a minor, you're going to go to jail for a long, long time. And the inmates inside there are going to eat you the fuck alive until you're dead. The value of knowledge. The reward. The reward for not having actually and actively and continuously, like, fucking raped Eris, right? For not having destroyed everything yet. What is the reward for not having destroyed your society? Or rejected it and just run away? The reward is you get to be a part of society. You get to have a friend in Eris and be a part of something that's akin to a family in this place. And you get some free reign over this location. And you get a little bit of power and a little bit of freedom in the form of the money that you earn, which you can use to buy books and things that you want. And you get a little bit of respect and power and authority from the people around you and the family around you and the other nobles around you. And you get a little bit of attention, which we see at the ball when all the girls are sort of looking at you, right? You start, if you don't fuck everything up completely, you start to become a part of something, and that is reward in itself. Nobody hands you a platter full of gold and says, good job, you didn't rape your friend, right? But it's kind of the equivalent. It's kind of the equivalent. So in the context of, I believe that every man is capable, minus very slim exceptions, I believe that every man is capable of rape. I think that if you are a man and you think you are not capable of rape, you're lying to yourself, and you need to seriously examine that shit. Because if you're still in I couldn't hurt a fly mode, you're lying. You're an animal. You're a chimpan fucking Z, and they're brutal and vicious. There's very little difference between you and an LA street gang member. Besides your nurture, besides your structures, besides your beliefs. There's very little difference. And those people rape and murder all the time. I mean, really, imagine it. Imagine who you would be if you'd spent the last 20 years of your life fending completely for yourself in a dangerous world ruled by violence, drugs, sex, and exploitation. You would be part and parcel of violence, drugs, sex, and exploitation. You would be an aspect of it, a finger of it, the right hand of it. You would be it. You know, we love to look at ourselves and go, oh, I'm so moral, I'm so just. That's really nice when everything's working. It's really nice when everything's working. It falls apart real fast when some hardship hits. I found that out on my own when I started this channel because I was starting to starve. And when you start to starve, ideas start going through your mind that are not yours. They're animal ideas. Ideas like, I wonder if I could break into my neighbor's house and get a couple cans of beans, you know? I wonder if I could sacrifice everything about my future to eat today. You stop being able to compute things. And stuff that is unconscionable becomes totally acceptable in your mind. Because your perspective and your values shift and go away. Really imagine what hunger is like. Try not eating today. You know? See how you feel at like 8 p.m. And see whether... Consider what you might be willing to do in order to get a meal. Consider what you might be willing to do in order to get a meal in 24 hours. Would you punch somebody? Probably. Would you punch a child? Maybe 24 hours later. Would you punch a child twice? Maybe 36 hours later. It'll take you over. You're not as strong as you think you are. You're in no way stronger than your body. No way. No way. And so you have to train it. So why does this matter? This matters because I think that scenes like this that are deeply uncomfortable are helping to teach men not to do the rape emotionally, because they, to some extent, demonstrate the rape from the perspective of the victim. That's why they feel so uncomfortable, because they're not specifically shot from the perspective of the victim, but they're shot from the emotional perspective of the victim, and maybe more importantly, from the emotional perspective of a third party watching. Because if you were at a bar and you saw one of your friends like groping a woman, and she's going, no, get off of me, no, and he's continuing, your response to that is automatically going to be, unless you have something fundamentally wrong with your worldview. Unless you're a part of it. Unless you're either too scared to act or think, or willingly happy to exploit that person and actively a part of the rape. I think I'm right on this. I think that the viewpoint is as a third person watching somebody that you care about do something wrong, that you know is wrong, that the show and its framing depicts as wrong. And what does this do? It puts you, to some extent, into the mentality of having to empathize for the victim. And what that means is the 1% or whatever percentage of people who actually watch all of Mushoku Tensei and incorporate it, of you, the 1% of those people who will find themselves in a position where they are on top of a woman who either cannot or has not consented for whatever reason, those people might have a moment where they're able to snap out of horny and dominant and controlling and powerful. They might be able to snap out of that moment and feel scared and recognize that there is a scared, terrified person who is being abused in front of them and that they're the one doing it. And it might be a moment where that person, maybe one of them, goes, oh fuck, oh no, I can't, and doesn't do something bad and saves somebody else from turmoil and saves the would-be rapist from a life of turmoil. That seems like good to me. It also seems, it's a hypothetical, but it also seems plausible to me. It also seems plausible. And it seems in line with the comments that I've gotten from people about Mushoku Tensei. Comments from people talking about how they felt like their sexuality was becoming unhealthy, and Mushoku Tensei let them change it, let them examine it from a different perspective. People who thought that Rudy's perspective really made a difference for them. I think that people will come at this position that I've just stated by saying, well, the story can't teach that. I think they're wrong. I think it might not be able to teach it to you. In fact, I think maybe you might feel like it can't teach that because you don't need to be taught it. You might already know it. And it might seem really obvious to you. Great truths often do. Great truths often seem very obvious in hindsight. And then, if you've known that truth for a couple of years, somebody else who goes, wow, I just realized this really important thing about the world, you look at them and you go, finally, like, duh. That's not the way to be. The way to be is, yes, yeah, absolutely, good, you got it. You figured out part of the dance. Now come dance with me. Let's go. Yeah, we can all dance together because you figured out that part. Good stuff. That's what it should be. No condescension. Just joy at the development of others. Okay, so, I mean, a lot more happens in the episode 6 and up through episode 8. I think the mistake or the not understanding what the double take was my only real thing that I wanted to fix about episode 8's discussion. So that's good. Oh god, we're an hour and a half in. Can I do comment spotlights? I have to delete some stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do a minimized comment spotlight. I'm just going to hit a couple things because we did the long form one last time, and I'm just going to go to top comments on both, and I'm going to grab some top comments. I'm going to just allow the filtering of the voting system to determine what I go through. Captain Wolfbane, I'm so glad this got released uncut, or at least minimally cut. Yep, uncircumcised. I'm actually circumcised, so I don't know why you need to know that. You don't. Don't randomly ban me. I won't. It says, holy moly, truly another example of why one should support T. Thank you. I agree. That I make content that I hope is good in the hopes that you will think it is good and decide to support me. So, yeah, follow through with that and support me, and then that will tell me that I'm doing the right thing and will reinforce the idea that I'm doing the right thing. So, good. QB, being 100% honest, this has been some top content and I enjoyed every second of it. Sick. Very first question. Okay, deal. Finally made the phone call I kept delaying for a whole month. Went better than I thought it would. Thanks. Oh, yeah. Let's fucking go. Ngak. All right, let me pitch in my theory about how someone could have a bad impression on MT and the people like it. As a media consumer, you get used to sexual content being there for the viewer's pleasure, even if you don't enjoy it. So sexual content equals fan service. You are watching MT and Rudius Grope's Eris. You don't enjoy it, but since it's fan service, you conclude that other people must enjoy the scene. And then there's the idea that media can affect you and change you. Even if I don't feel like becoming a lolicon or a molester after watching MT, other people might. Add the bonus belief that lolicons are dangerous, and suddenly MT is a dangerous show and no one should watch it. I take this with a grain of salt because this is me talking about why other people must not like the show. Right? It's yeah. You're projecting and hoping to come up with a conclusion based on presumptions. Like, of course, there are going to be flaws in your assumptions and thus in your conclusions, but you did a good job and you recognize that, so what else can I ask from you? I'm going to take a slightly different perspective. I think you're not unright. I think you're correct to some extent, but I think that watching Rudius, who you identify with, grope Eris, violates you. Why? Because you identify with Rudius, and watching him perform an act that you disagree with on an emotional level that you know is wrong indicates to you your potential for doing it. It violates you because you recognize that you could enjoy it. I think that's what's going on. I think after examining myself and my own emotional and physical, like almost reflexive response to the scenes, Eris is sexualized. There is a sexual thing happening on screen, and that titillates my brain. It lights up some structures in my brain, okay? Unconscious structures, things that are beyond control. Again, this is like a man's eyes flicking to a woman who walks by. You cannot judge me for it, and if you do, you are being unfair. Sexual content on screen lights up a part of your brain, period, okay? Whether it's right or wrong, you don't get to judge that until a second later. Now, you do get to judge it a second later, but that doesn't change it from happening. So when you see Rudy assault Eris, a sexual thought happens. When you see him reach under her skirt, that becomes associated with every sexual thought, every reaching under a skirt, every touching of panties, every view of panties, every panty shot, every groping of a breast, everything that you've ever thought. It's all associated. It's all part of one thing. And so, your fundamental view of yourself, I am a good person, I do not get titillated by children being assaulted, is now at odds with the reality, which is that something in your brain just went online as you watched a child be assaulted. And that fundamental contradiction violates you. It violates your sense of self and your viewpoint and your being. Because you view yourself as a fundamentally good person, and you're not. And the show is showing you that you're not, and that's uncomfortable. And I think it's pretty striking that the people who like this show almost always come at it admitting some kind of weakness or failing that the show helped them get over. And the people who dislike this show often come at it from a very serious moral high ground. One that says that something along the lines of, but I would never. I'm nowhere near like this. I can't imagine how Rudy might think. I can't imagine being anything like him. Which means that those people are lying to themselves because they can imagine it, but they're putting it as far away from themselves as possible and compartmentalizing it as something they'd rather not look at, aka the shadow, the part of the self that you don't want to admit is part of the self. It seems pretty interesting to me that the people who get something valuable out of Mushoku Tensei seem to have some extent to be aware of their shadow and the process of integrating with it, and the people who do not seem to be okay with Mushoku Tensei seem to be not integrated yet, refuse to see the world from another perspective, refuse to admit wrongness, incapable of viewing any other way. It is wrong. That's why it becomes so fundamentalist feeling. Because they can't actually express what's wrong with it. So they say it must be wrong because there's pedophilic content in it. That's the thing that makes me uncomfortable. No. What makes you uncomfortable is that you can get titillated by content that contains something that you disagree with morally. This is actually really important. This is really important. You might be against gay sex, but if I put gay sex on a screen in front of you, the sexual parts of your brain light up. And what's really funny is the more actively against gay sex you are, the more the sexual parts of your brain light up when I show you gay sex porn. So, what does that say? I don't think there's been a study about this, but could we presume the possibility that maybe the people that are the most vehemently anti-lolicon are the ones who are shamed by their own attraction to children? I think it's possible. I don't think it's universal, but I think it's possible. I think that there might be some root to that. And that would explain, because when people are ashamed, they act really defensive, and they try to destroy whatever it is that shames them. And that seems to track with the way that people sometimes interact or view this show. Let's do a fun thing here. Instead of going to the comments, I'm going to go to somewhere else. Not my comments, the free comments. The free comments, the ones on, let's say, my anime list. I agree that the production values are top-notch. In my opinion, Mushoku Tensei has all the trappings of a typical JRPG-inspired fantasy, except with a repulsive, openly pedophilic main character. A random loser who died and got reincarnated as a child, except his old consciousness is always present. It's a seemingly ordinary show until an adult child predator's voice starts narrating. On top of that, it's another wish fulfillment isekai, even though it's not as apparent as most modern power fantasy isekai. It seems different because it was written before all those tropes were done to death. Every season for the last 6 years, there have been dozens of ironic and satirical power fantasies. They don't bother pretending like they're not harems with overpowered protagonists. This story is different because it does the tropes without a veil of irony. This is the kind of show that makes anime fans look bad. You mean this is the kind of show that makes you look bad? It is riddled with degenerate fan service. What makes fan service degenerate? It's that it makes you uncomfortable. Unnecessary sexualization. Sex is normal in the world. What makes the sexualization unnecessary is that you are uncomfortable. I, so far, episode 8 episodes through, have found 0 unnecessary sexualization. In fact, every bit of sexualization I've seen in Mushoku Tensei so far has been pretty solidly restrained and for a purpose. You know, necessary. Ooh, also, and the pedophile main character spoils all the enjoyment. Your enjoyment. The excessive use of sex and nudity, where? Is meant for titillation. Maybe, or maybe it's for teaching you a lesson. I only saw a generic isekai with the same as any ecchi anime, which is an excellent indicator of the target audience. None of this comes as a surprise. Apparently, the author was inspired by porn games like Rants. Yeah, because they tell a wrong story. Rants is a fucking rapist. You ever play through the Rants games? Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Go play through Rants games. Rants is a fucking rapist. He's a monster. He basically fucks girls until they love him, which is a pretty classic thing in JRPG hentai, and hentai in general, and porn in general. It's a rapacious idea. It's an evil idea. So, it's really interesting that this person says the author was inspired by porn games like Rants, and yet the things that RUDY does, while his actions may be inspired by the porn games, the consequences of those actions are often the opposite. Not only does he not get to fuck the girl until she loves him, he doesn't get to fuck her at all, and she punches him in the face. It's a bit of a reversal of expectation, wouldn't you say? Almost like there's some thought put into it. Like it can't be dismissed so quickly. I like ecchi anime. One of my favorites is interspecies reviewers. Suppose Mushoku Tensei is accurate to the Middle Ages. Fantasy settings do not need to replicate every shitty aspect of the past. The author selected perversion as the thing he wanted to replicate. The only excuse is that he wished to keep it realistic. That's lazy writing at best. The story doesn't comment on why there is a constant perversion. It just is. That's because it just is. You don't need a comment on why there's constant perversion. Every male in the entire world should be aware of this, unless you are detached as fuck from your sexuality, which you might be. If you're attached to your sexuality in any way and you are male, everything in the world is perverted. Because you are capable of seeing everything sexually. It's why that's what she said jokes exist. Every turn of phrase can be turned sexual. The author selected perversion as the thing he wanted to replicate. The story doesn't comment on why there is a constant perversion. It just is. The obvious answer is men had more power than women and consent was irrelevant to them. Yeah, that's a fair point. Reasonable. That is a fair point. The structures that are present in this medieval era are less equal even than the ones that are present in the modern day. Fine. So what? We see this with the strong male characters who lead the households, such as the fathers in the Grey Rat family. They wield swords, sit at the end of the table, and have sex with whoever they want. Aside from that, there is nothing historically accurate about it. Okay, I've got a question for you. What kind of household would you rather live in? The only household that worked for birthing children is one where there's a mother and a father. And usually, in households where there's a mother and a father, some kind of order establishes itself. Now, sometimes the mother is more in charge than the father, and sometimes the father is more in charge than the mother. But we see Paul and wife. Fuck, I just totally forgot her name. Forgive me, I'm not trying to be fucking sexist by forgetting her name. Paul and his wife, we just saw them argue about something and come to a mutualistic conclusion. Yes, a great patriarchy indeed, where Paul is the one with all the power. That's why in episode 2, Paul is the one in the least power in the circumstance, and we demonstrate how much power the woman has in the household. and how much power she has to destroy him based on his mistakes, and how she is, to some extent, the moral center of the location. And to some extent, he bows to her because her respect is the one thing that he really does care about. It's almost like the person who wrote this review didn't watch the show, and instead watched their depiction of the show. But to be fair, that's what everybody does with everything. You have a set of perceptual structures, you observe a thing that doesn't fit your perceptual structures, you fit the things that fit, and the parts that don't fit you reject, and you claim that they must be wrong because they don't fit your worldview. Instead of recognizing the truth, which is that your worldview is very narrow, because you are a tiny ant person, and there are 7 billion of us, and all of us are wrong about all things. About all the things. Okay? So to believe yourself to be right about literally anything is absurd. Or at least to believe yourself to be right without opening the door for what could be wrong. To say, in total, aside from that, there is nothing else historically accurate about it. Or the fan service is expressive. Or the only excuse is that he wished to keep it realistic. Or the obvious answer is it's because of this. Even if what you said is true, which it isn't, doing the bare minimum isn't redemption. He is expected to save an innocent person's life and does not have sex with a kid. It's basic human decency. That's not something to applaud. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Basic human decency is worth applauding. I will die on that hill. Basic human decency is worth applauding. What's the alternative? The alternative is that they go and they rape and they murder. Because the natural state of human beings is nasty, brutish, and short. We are naturally violent. We are naturally rapacious. We have cravings and we're willing to hurt others to satisfy them. Our history is one of killing the other people across the hill so that we could get their fucking berry patches. Our history is killing all the men of a tribe and stealing all of their women and raping them for their entire lives so that they bear us more children and our society gets stronger. Except then we enslave their children and we use their children as slave labor so that our society gets stronger. And that's wrong. There are things that happen when there isn't applause. Now, I understand the idea, right? It's like giving out a participation trophy, right? It's like, you did the bare minimum. We shouldn't be like, woo! But we should, because society will actually reward you for doing the bare minimum more than not. Going out of your way to save people is more than the bare minimum, first of all. But actively restraining yourself is part and parcel to becoming a functioning member of society, because you're no longer a threat to the people around you, and they can trust you. And if they can trust you, they can interact with you. And if they can interact with you, they can trade information and ideas and money and business with you. So if we can take a few hundred people, for example, and turn them from not thinking there's any reason to do anything to thinking at least there's a reason to not rape and murder people as a fundamental, then those couple hundred people are going to be far better elements of society, aka far better people. It is ridiculous to me to say that it is not worth applauding people for not being child predators. I think it absolutely is. I think everything that you want a person to do should come with a carrot and a stick. You don't want people to rape children. Hurt the people who are raping children, reward the people who aren't. And that reward can be as simple as, great, you get to be a part of society. You don't have to go door to door telling people you're a child molester. Nice. You get to be around children, which, to be clear, being around children is lovely. Children are full of light and life. Hell, to some extent, I think being around children makes life worth living. There's value there. Having an uncomfortable, unhealthy relationship with them because you have some unsettled, weird sexual thing that you haven't been able to figure out because it's so wrapped in shame and guilt, and you've never seen a story that showed that you don't have to be this way, and then you watch Mushoku Tensei, and you see somebody who's way worse than you are, put it aside, and stop thinking that way. And struggle through it, like, not completely, right? He's still a perv in lots of ways. He's still a lolicon in lots of ways. He's still got all these flaws, but he's moving in a direction. You see that, and you see a world where that is rewarded. Because Rudy is rewarded for this, right? For not actually raping Eris. He is rewarded. He gets to remain part of the family. He gets to remain part of the game. He gets to play, I am part of society. And because he's part of it, he gets to learn more, and he gets to pursue the things that he's interested in, and he gets to remain friends, right? That seems correct to me. A story that says, hey, you know that pretty girl that you like? Don't rape her, and you get to be her friend. And she won't hate you forever. Doesn't strike me as a bad story. Strikes me as a pretty good story. Strikes me as the kind of story that maybe our young men should hear. Strikes me as the kind of thing that might reinforce the factual, logical knowledge that rape is bad with an emotional context that puts into place both what would I be causing if I were to do this to somebody? What would I be making them feel? And what would I be sacrificing? What would I be giving up in order to get this momentary pleasure? Because the answer is my entire life and my well-being and the well-being of the person that I'm doing it to and everything else. That's pretty interesting. It's also pretty useful. Strikes me as the kind of thing that should be taught. This comment is founded as like a dialectic, which is a good form, but of course it just lets the author produce a straw man and argue against it. So it ends up being useless to you, Panda, as you write your discussion. Sorry. Al, the straw man, you're projecting your own morals onto a story that takes place in a different time and place. The only reason why you preach your moral purity like a saint is that you're too more narrow-minded to divide fiction from reality. As someone who's been consuming anime for years now, I'm capable of keeping reality and fiction far apart. So straw man. And then, of course, the real answer from the person who believes that they're right comes and is, are all anime simply meaningless cartoons that can't comment on real-world issues? I reject that. Good, me too. Fiction is a means of communicating thoughts, emotions, stories. Yes, it's way more than that. Even if work of fiction makes you feel ashamed or guilty, like Mushoku Tensei obviously makes you feel, I will never undermine an entire art form by saying it's just fiction. Good! But you need to actually examine why it makes you feel ashamed and guilty, because it's not for the reason that you think it is. It's not because it endorses pedophilia. It's because it makes you recognize that you do. It makes you recognize the part of you that is capable of being attracted to little girls. Because I think you have that part in you. Okay. I won't undermine an entire art form by saying it's just fiction. Have some balls, for God's sakes. If we generously assume the show is depicting real-world problems, it's doing it poorly, such as Rudy's pedophilia. The show endorses his actions. Inaccurate. That's not what's going on here. The show demonstrates his actions. It does not endorse them. In fact, it demonstrates them in a way that makes them emotionally and visually unappealing. Even though he calls himself disgusting, there is no self-awareness. What? What? I doubt he will come to realize what he is and stop. What? Of course, people don't consciously come into awareness of themselves unless they're having a revelatory experience or are using certain drugs or are very mature and very smart. It's really hard to think about thinking. It's really, really hard to observe yourself in the process of thinking. Fool. This comment is so... See, now I'm in the risk of strawmanning or demonizing. That's why I'm trying to read some of this comment for you directly. It's absolutely illogical trash. Mr. What's your name? Rebel Panda on my anime list. You suck. Get better. You view yourself as a pretty good critic. You suck. Get better. Your criticism is in bad faith. Your dialectic is a straw man. Your arguments are not well thought through. You position things as fact that are just opinion. You are wrong. All over. Sorry, Panda. Such as Rudy's pedophilia, the show endorses his actions. Even though he calls himself disgusting, there is no self-awareness. Calling yourself scum isn't enough. He is like a fan of degenerate anime, such as Arrow Manga Sensei, who says, anime is trash, and so am I. Yes, he was. There is no nuance, it's just presenting repulsive aspects for either shock or fetishization. Nope. It's presenting repulsive aspects to tell repulsive stories, to tell mythological stories. A character that does the most repulsive thing is capable of recognizing his own failings and fixing them. Ta-da! You're right, he is a pervert, and bad people aren't necessarily severely written characters. Whether or not I like Rudius is irrelevant to whether or not he's a well-written character. What matters is, how does the story depict the ramifications of his negative choices? Does it condemn his actions or condone them? Does it focus on him or the person he hurt? In this case, he is always the focus. The other characters are unimportant, and even when they do have a chance to voice their discomfort, the scenes are full of low camera angles, leering shots, and dehumanizing close-ups on breasts and thighs. It boils down to, haha, sexual assault, rather than painting him in a negative light. Even the decent female characters like Roxy, decent female characters, are treated as objects. After the first 2 episodes, she only appeared in brief clips where she was constantly getting molested. Hey, so here's the thing. The show is from Rudy's perspective, and Rudy doesn't understand women, so the women who are in the show are misunderstood. Easy. Second, the show is written by a man, and men don't understand women. So obviously, the women who are in the show are going to be poor facsimiles of women. This is fair criticism of the piece of media. The women are written kind of like caricatures, because if you're named Rifujin and you happen to be male, you're going to have a harder time writing women than you are writing men. Also, he's writing the story for men, not for women. I'm sorry to say this, there are probably plenty of women who love Mushoku Tensei, and that's awesome, but this story is for a young man, part and parcel, like top to bottom. This is for a young man who's struggling with sexual perversion and guilt and shame, and doesn't know what to do with it, and has all these struggles in front of them, and vibes with being a NEET, and vibes with all these fantasies, and doesn't know how to put their mythologies together, and this puts them in a line. Ha ha, sexual assault. Does it condemn his actions or condone them? At this point, I actually don't care. I actually don't care. I care that there are psychologically valuable responses to them. And the answer is always that it condemns him. Because the show always looks at him like a creepy pervert when he's acting like a creepy pervert. When we get him with a face that's like, that's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to look at that and be like, yeah, I'm that guy right now. I'm him. You're supposed to look at him and go, ew. Does it focus on him or the person he hurt? It focuses on him. It focuses on him because he's a narcissist and so are most rapists. You gotta find a reason that they shouldn't do it. And that reason can't just be because you're going to hurt the person that you're doing it to. It has to be something more fundamental. I'm sorry, but this is true. People don't do things because they're right. People do things because they want to do them. People don't stop doing things because they're right. People stop doing things because they want to stop. You can tell a heroin addict a bajillion times how right it is for them to stop quitting heroin, and they will not. But if you make them have a revelatory experience, like if they have a godly revelation, however you believe that those happen, they will have a much easier time quitting. Because it changed the meaning to them. You can tell a person who's an alcoholic that they're hurting their friends and family all the time, but until they have some shift in their perspective where they realize, and hurting themselves all the time, and they'll keep doing it. Until they have some shift in their perspective, they'll keep doing it. You have to change that perspective. And the same goes for sexuality, sexualization, objectification, assault. You can know in your heart that doing it is wrong and it's causing harm. Even if you believe that doing it to, like, 2D characters is not wrong and not causing harm, I'd argue against that at this point in my life. I think that's false. I think that viewing, sexualizing, observing, loli-style characters, I've changed my mind on this. I think it warps you. I think it affects you. I don't care what it does to society. I care about what it does to the reader. And it changes you. And I think if you examine yourself, you will find that this is true. I think if you go and you masturbate to nothing but loli porn for a couple of weeks, your outlook on life will change. Hi again, quick little insert from the future. I think my past self thought that some of the fundamental assumptions of his argument were self-evident, and I don't think they're as evident as I thought they were. So let me give you a couple of them because I think they frame the point a little bit better. I don't necessarily think that everyone necessarily even has the capacity to be instantly attracted to certain types of pornography. But from my experience and the experience that I've had of talking to other people about this, I think it is true that when you start down a sexual or pornographic loop or rabbit hole, it can become far more extreme and more weird as you go. And the more exposure you have to certain types of pornography, the more you seem to need in order to reach what you're looking for, like, you know, some kind of sexual fulfillment or whatever it is. And eventually the actual thing that you're trying to fulfill, which is reaching climax, right? Like, there's a goal in your masturbatory and pornographic search for sexual content. What I think is that anyone is capable of going down that rabbit hole, and with enough exposure to any type of pornographic content might become either desensitized to it or even fully attracted to it. And that can certainly happen 100% with drawings of young or childlike characters. And it's fucking scary that can happen, but I believe it can happen. Like, whether you seek it out, whether it's what you want or not, if you're exposed to it enough, I think it can change you. This is coming from me, from somebody who, my brain was shaped by 4chan, a horrible place, to be clear. My brain was shaped by 4chan and shaped by, like, hentai manga, and it's had an effect on me, like a serious effect on me, and I've just kind of realized this, which seems like an obvious thing to realize, but I've just kind of realized this, and it seems like an important thing to share, so I'm being very vulnerable and honest by sharing it, but this is what I think might be leading down some direction towards something that might be true, so there you go. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more grounding in what I think my past self is thinking that he means. There you go. I think if you go and you masturbate to nothing but loli porn for a couple of weeks, your outlook on life will change. Then go and masturbate to nothing but MILF porn for a couple of weeks and see if your outlook on life changes. And then go and masturbate to no porn for a couple of weeks and see how your life changes. Because that's what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and my perspective on women is different. My perspective on women is different. It's almost like how you act shapes how you will act in the future. Or maybe how you behave changes your perceptions. It's almost like that's true, and I think it is. So why does it not focus on the women? Because Rudy is not capable of really viewing them as full people at this point. He's only capable of viewing things from a narcissistic perspective. I fully expect that we will get information from the women in the future, and it may or may not be well done. Because again, it's Refugee and it's a man writing them. And that's tough. So, that's really interesting, isn't it? I think that's really interesting, that it only focuses on Rudy. Why? Because the viewer is Rudy. Because the person this is aimed at is the person who feels like they're Rudy, and they need a reason not to do these things. A reason that resonates with them. And that reason, unfortunately, cannot just be the logical, simple, straightforward truth, which is, it's wrong to rape people. It can't be. You have to justify it some other way. You have to make it sink in, and you do that with emotion. And so the story that demonstrates the thing in a way that makes it emotionally resonant and painful, because it's painful for a male to watch those scenes. They did a good job. And it's similarly painful to watch the scene where Roxy gets her face kicked in and is bloody. That's similar and visceral and painful. But it's less painful and easier to look at. You can judge that based on, sex versus violence, whatever. It's less painful and easier to look at than Rudy trying to rape her or assault her. That's really uncomfortable to watch. It's not because the scene is uncomfortable. It's because it makes you uncomfortable, because it uncovers something uncomfortably true within you. And you're unwilling to admit it, and so you blame the show for being wrong. The mirror shows what's real. Don't blame the mirror for being ugly. Look at yourself. Don't blame the mirror for being ugly. Mushoku Tensei is a mirror. Don't blame the mirror for being ugly. Look at yourself. I'm done on my anime list. Episode 8 video comments. Kelvin Calthon. The first scene is it was all in his mind. Yep. Bunch of people appreciating this. I quoted Wormy Senpai, when you hit the point of no return, that's the moment it truly becomes a journey. If you can still turn back, it's not really a journey. I don't know where this is from. Somebody said Sorayori. I think it might be. Yeah, it is. This is a spoiler, but it's been spoiled for me, so I'm going to be honest about it. Hilda was the one. So people have mentioned that this is something that's explained in the light novel and the web novel, but not in the anime as far as they know. And so I feel like it's viable to talk about it. It was Hilda. It was the mother. She pushed Eris to go to her room. So that's interesting to know where Eris is coming from in terms of the family dynamic. It's kind of fucked up. And I'm not going to read through it, but Vartik, if you want to find it, Vartik writes out the entire section from the light novel, which is extremely useful. It's a bunch of Eris POV. It shares what Eris was feeling during the sequence and scenes, and it's very important. Because while she's doing it out of like duty and responsibility, she is actively like in her mind from the perspective of the author, well, whether you agree with this or not or whatever, is actively consenting and is actively interested in doing this with false assumptions, but is wanting Rudy and is scared that he's going to reject her. So that's a pretty different perspective than we get in the anime, right? Like we do get her being bashful and scared and frightened, but we don't know how to read it. So that's pretty interesting. Incredible world building in the episode, yes. Something about this scene being very warmly lit as opposed to gray and evil, that this is a joyous occasion and like all of this is good, and that to some extent it would be not deeply wrong. It would not be deeply wrong for Rudy to accept in the offered position where Eris has come into his room of her own seeming volition, right? It would not be wrong. There's something right there, you know? It's wrong because of the circumstance, you know? It's not wrong because of the act. The actual situation of Eris and Rudy sitting together on a bed, agreeing together to explore this sexual thing together, that's correct. There's something in that image of the two of them sitting on the bed, bashful, that is right. But there's something in the process that isn't right, and so it doesn't happen now because it can't happen now because it's not correct. They're not ready for it, right? So that's what the scene shows us, really, is that this is a joyous occasion, and if you want to look, you can, and if Rudy wants to touch her, he can, but there are boundaries and limits, and they're exploring, and it's dangerous, and it's scary. That's really good. Oh god, I can't do this. Kiki is best girl. Oh my god, Kiki is best girl. I actually have to. Kiki is best girl writes, I am very sorry for the 3-part book series and potential movie coming later this year. Don't worry about it. TLDR, not all fan service is created equal. I agree. Thoughts on fan service? To frame it, I'd like to bring it back to an OG Gurren Lagann. Yep. There are a few episodes, particularly during the middle of the first arc of the series, that contain objective fan service, particularly the bathhouse episode and especially the uncensored version. Hot episode, by the way. I'm gonna tell you this as well. This is as an aside. I'm gonna be more open with anything that I feel sexually in media. I'm going to be more open if I find something hot or disgusting or whatever, and I'm just going to be more open about it. That includes being like, titties, and I'm just going to do it. It's honest. I'm going to be a naked nudist. I'm going to be honest here. It's something that I have to do, and that means being open about it, and if that makes you uncomfortable, then I'm sorry, but again, I think that has more to do with you than with me, and I think I'm just acting as a mirror and being honest, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you might need to examine yourself instead of the mirror. Okay. However, during the first 3 episodes especially, there are a lot of moments that focus to an almost absurd degree on Yoko's body. Hugely. I mean, I know why this is because I have watched through Gurren Lagann like a dozen times, and I think about trigger shows a lot. I think about them a lot. Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, I think about a lot. Like a lot. They're mythological. There's a reason there's a 2.5-hour video of me analyzing Kill la Kill now on the Patreon. Go check it out. It's worth checking out. It's got stuff in it. But there are a lot of moments that focus to an almost absurd degree on Yoko's body. And many of the shows, the reactions I've seen to the show tend to have the same reaction, kind of getting annoyed or happy and dismissing it as fan service and moving it on. I think this is a gross disservice to the show and a legitimate use of sexuality within it. It's important to keep in mind who the main character is. At the end of the day, the focus is on Simon, and Simon is a boy going through puberty, one who just had a lightly clothed girl his age. She's a little older, a little more mature than he is, which is actually the way that it goes with young men, right? Girls develop faster than we do. So that by the time you start coming into sexuality as a young man in like middle or high school, the girls in your class already have breasts and are starting to get their periods and are their shape is changing and they're starting to look like women. They're trying to wear bras. Like, women are sexual before men are. They go into that, they enter that space before we do. That's probably a good thing because it lets them explore the territory before the more dangerous boys get there because we're a little bit more chaotic about it. That's pretty good. So Yoko being more sexual and being a pure sex object is absolutely true. She is a girl that he clearly finds attractive. All the shots that we get of her body are from Simon's perspective, and all of them are directly significant to the shocking events of episode 9 and the moments that lead up to it. We see Yoko as a sexual being because that's how Simon sees her, because he likes her, because he finds her attractive. There is significance to Yoko as a sexual being, just as there is significance to every woman as a sexual being, and every man is a sexual being, minus the few exceptions who are ace. We are sexual beings, and we spend a lot of time denying it. There is purpose, there is reason, and it is not simply the gratification of the male audience. It is in fact later used to destroy a presumed mostly male audience by delivering on Yoko as a romantic and sexual being, and then using that as a direct part of what caused the death of Kamina. Yes, to the point that I've seen people get visibly and vocally upset at Simon. And it's important to note that the following episodes contain nothing of Yoko portrayed as she had been, because Simon is not in a state of mind to process that. There is a shot in episode 10 of Yoko naked in the shower, and the show makes absolutely no effort to use it for sexual gratification. Furthermore, when we meet Nia, the proper female, the proper feminine for Simon to pursue, because she is not introduced, characterized, or shown in any way that is even remotely sexual, because this is accurate. When you meet the girl of your dreams, you will be interested in her physically and sexually, but that will not be the primary point of interest. But the girl that you're like drooling over across the way, probably not it. It's weird, but you're in lust with her, not in love, right? And it could turn into the other. And when it does, while you'll still be attracted to her, it will become less the thing that you're attracted about. You don't fall in love with a girl because of her booty. You fall in infatuation with her because of her sexuality, and you might fall in love as a result of that, but that ain't how it goes. You're going to fall in love with the person. Nia is not sexualized. Okay. And this continues until the end of the show, even the moments that she is in the cockpit with Simone, literally naked, because Simone is different now, and he sees Nia a lot more complexly than he had the ability to see Yoko. Now, what does this PhD thesis have to do with Mushoku Tensei? Well, recently there has been Twitter drama regarding a HoloLive VTuber. Her fans upset that she had the absolute gall to collab with a male VTuber, going so far as to demand that she never interact with another male VTuber, as if they're somehow entitled to make decisions about who their favorite fictional women, and critically, the real woman behind that character interacts with. They feel threatened by a fictional male. It's genuinely creepy how some people, men especially, seriously think about the women they feel some attachment to. This is unfortunately not an isolated incident. I'm hardly the first to point out the cesspool that is Japanese idol culture, the disturbing things some of the people within it are willing to do. It wasn't too long ago that a headline circulated around of a slightly obsessed fan that tracked down a Japanese idol by using the reflection of her eye in a selfie. I think the show is aware that people like that obviously exist within the anime community, and it's aware of the frustration. Yeah, I mean, we watched Perfect Blue not that long ago, right? Obsessively shaping a media personality into being what you think they should be is something that Satoshi Kon examined decades ago. Like in film, in real artistic depth, because it's a deep concept. It has to do with identity shattering. It has to do with subjectively forcing identities on people without understanding them. There are some layers to it. And it's aware of the frustration that some of its audience experiences with regards to their interactions with and desire for women. Hugely! The virgin otaku is the Japanese version of the black-pilled incel. The only difference is that in America, they can buy guns and shoot up schools. It's the same fucking problem. And it's leading to people shooting up schools. Now, I'm sorry, but if you don't get the connection there, you can ask me to express it later, and I will do my best. I don't have time right now to express the connection between incels and school shootings and sexual dissatisfaction among the male youth, but it's interconnected deeply. The stereotype of the virgin otaku is widespread and tired, and while not every male viewer is the kind that would fit right in with the Smash Bros. Drama circle, if you know, you know. I do know. I've followed that drama a lot. A lot of it's insane. Also, a lot of it is lies, which is really crazy. That's the crazy part. So there are some Smashers who have done some wrong things. Of course there are. Of course. There are also some Smashers who've done no wrong things and been pilloried. And there are also some Smashers who've done one wrong thing, and then like 20 other people made false claims claiming that they did other wrong things, and all of those are lies. And they've been proven to be lies. There's some interesting shit going around with this cancel stuff. It's not isolated. It's not limited. You know? Like SSBM0 did some wrong things, but he is unable to be redeemed for them. He cannot apologize for them. He is unacceptable in society. He cannot play the sport that he is good at. There's something weird about that. There's something weird about that, right? Because when a child fucks up, you punish them, you separate them from the family, and then the moment that they are willing to admit that they were wrong and they're going to act in the right way, you let them back into the family. That's how it should be. That's how our society should be too. Somebody fucked up, they should be punished for it, and then when they learn their lesson, they should be let back in. But that's not the perspective anymore. You're not allowed to learn a lesson. You have to be perfect from the outset, from the very beginning. And you're not allowed to change your mind either. You have to be a part of the tribal group. Otherwise, you get shot by the firing squad. Either you're a part of the bourgeoisie or the proletariat. And if you're a part of the bourgeoisie, you're going to get your head on a pike. And I don't mean the bourgeoisie, I mean the outgroup. The ones who are the root of all evil. The bad. There are undeniably problematic views, ideas, and frustrations that can lead to a community becoming a cesspool. Yes, this show, as I see it, uses the same tactics that Gurren Lagann did to purposefully make the viewer uncomfortable. Rudy is not a good person, but he is a surprisingly real one. Flawed, imperfect, and dangerous. Just like the rest of us. And just like us, he is capable of disgusting things. But I'm not capable of disgusting things. I am just and moral and good. I sit on my white shining high horse in my brilliant armor, and I call out the injustices of the world while being perfect myself, and then fapping to loli porn. Clean your house out. Fix your lies. Flawed, imperfect, and dangerous, just like the rest of us. Now look at what his character does. Look at how he sees women. Look at how he behaves toward them. Are you okay with it? Do you like it? Why or why not? Does it make him a bad person? Here, have a scene of what would presumably be the male insert realizing the tsundere loli fantasy. How do you feel about it when it's granted to you in reality? When you are forced to really consider the possibility? Think about that as a perspective. You know, Japanese middle-aged men pay Japanese schoolgirls for sex. Happens all the time. Paid dating. Happens all the time. Okay? And there's a ton of porn fantasizing about it. About being the guy who goes and pays elementary, middle, high schoolers, whatever, for sex. And they, you know, for some reason they love it in the porn, because that's the fantasy, right? You know, they're like, I just want to play games, so sure, I'll let you fuck me. Because that's the fantasy, right? So you take the person who believes that, and you have them actually pay a child for sex, and they show up at a hotel, and the child's actually sitting there, and they have to face themselves in that moment. They have to face themselves in that moment, don't they? They have to make a decision, because they're at a turning point. A real turning point. Yes, intentional. I mean to do that. Up until this point, their thoughts have been wrong. They've been thinking about fucking a child, and they've gone through with it so far as to get to this point. Now it's in front of them. Once they step over this line, I think they do become irredeemable. You know, we talked about Rudius being the worst thing that could possibly be redeemed. I think if he steps over the line and actually touches a child, he's not redeemable anymore, ever. Now, maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that that's right. I'm pretty sure that that's grounded in some biological imperative stuff. That's some, like, if you're a tribe of people and there's a person in your tribe who's causing harm to children, they need to be dead now. And you can't feel any remorse for it. They need to be dead now, because otherwise the children get hurt. And the children are worth more than that asshole, so you kill him. So, the man, who you can imagine yourself being if you'd like, imagine the weeks of turmoil and anxiety and fear and wonder and excitement that might lead up to an event where you might pay someone for sex. Someone who's illegal to have sex with. Who is wrong and immoral and you know it to have sex with. Think about who you would have to be that person. And think about how you might feel when you walk in the door. And how you might steel yourself for the encounter. And how you might have to throw away parts of your morality in order to continue. And how there might be a chance for you to reach that point, reach that threshold, and go, oh wait, I was wrong, this isn't me, and turn around and walk away. I think, even after weeks of thinking it through, after performing the act in your mind over and over, after jerking off to dozens of images of porn, after considering and considering, that you have a chance to be redeemed if you walk away. So this is what I take from you saying, have a scene of what would be the male self-insert, realizing this fantasy. Have this scene. Here's what it would actually be like if it were perfect in every way. Okay? That's the Eris scene. Here's what it would actually be like if it was perfect in every way. If she were beautiful. If she were willing. If there were, in this world, there was no compunction about her being willing. That's why part of why we have the talk with the father, right? Society is not going to judge you for it. The girl is not going to judge you for it. Nobody's going to judge you for it except you yourself. You can get away with the perfect crime. You have every opportunity to pursue the thing that you think you desire. There it is. What judges you? Society doesn't. The girl doesn't. You do. Your conscience does. The part of you that knows what's right and wrong. The part of you that separates you from an animal. The part of you that can control what you want. And so when you show that to a real person who's watching it, they might go through the same experience of fantasizing a little bit about Eris. Because, probably, let me be real with you, if you're a male right now, I think your brain is conditioned to sexualize a woman. If a female character comes up on screen, your brain is, and this is fundamentally, like at a base level, if you see a woman 100 yards away in the forest, you're going to immediately scan what you see and determine whether that's a potential mate. And how good a mate? Immediately, instantly. Because of course you would. Hey, back at it with another little insert thought. So the gym is kind of my forest. It's sort of my explored space, and it's the place where I watch other people socialize and do their thing. But it's also where I get to see most other people. You know, I don't go shopping. I don't go to the mall. I don't go to the movies. I don't have any reason to. And I think that anybody who's, like, super connected in the modern world doesn't really have a reason to, like, go outside and walk around other than to walk and enjoy nature and be and experience and exercise, which is part of why I go to the gym. And I usually go to the gym outside. And what's cool about being at the gym outside is that there's a pretty large space. There's a full field, and there are usually people working out on it and doing various things, or playing soccer, or like running around, or some kids throwing a football around, or whatever. So there's like different social groups interacting. There are people doing things all over. There's a basketball court on the other side that's kind of further away, and it makes the whole space feel much larger. And there are sort of walls and trees of like the jungle gym things and the machines and the equipment, and there's stuff that everybody wants. There are resources there in terms of the equipment that's being used, and there has to be some kind of social interaction in order to manage and negotiate the sharing of resources. You know, if there's only one bench and two different people who don't know each other want to bench at the same time, then something's going to happen. One of them is going to sit there and look anxious, or they're going to go up to them and ask to work in, or something's going to happen with that interaction, or you know, it could end up in conflict, but generally it doesn't. And that's pretty fascinating that a bunch of people, often men, you know, hyped out on pre-workout and testosterone, because let's be honest, there are a lot of people at the gym who are not natural, but also natural testosterone, you know, angry men listening to metal music on their headphones and like, rawr, and yet they are like, hi, how's it going? Yes, can I use this piece of equipment that's sort of near you? I don't want to fuck with your shit. And everybody's really careful about their like personal bubbles and not encroaching on other people's bubbles. Anyway, so that's my forest. So when I see this thing about when you see a woman from 100 yards away, that's because it happens to me. I'll be walking, you know, to go grab a weight or something. And on the far side of the gym, there's the one entrance point where people walk in from where they've like scanned in inside. And you have to like walk around a little thing and walk past the pool and walk down this pretty long hallway in order to get to the outside gym equipment. You got to walk past the whole field. And as I'm walking, my brain is immediately looking up anytime that there's movement toward the entrance of the location. Partly as like a, who's that? What's there? Is that an enemy? Is there a struggle? Is that somebody that I know? And that's what starts to kick in. Is that somebody that I know? And is it a girl? Every fucking time my brain is going, girl? Is it a girl? Could there be a mate over there? And then if it's a girl, from like 100 yards away, I have pretty darn good vision. I've got better than 20/20 vision. It's hard to test how much better, but I think the last time that I tested, it was like 10/20 or 20/10, whichever way that goes. I think 10/20, I don't remember. But I've got really good eagle eye vision. But from 100 yards away, first off, I can tell that that's a woman immediately, no matter how she's dressed, no matter whether she has her hair up or a hat on or whatever. Immediately something in my brain goes, that's a female. And then the next thing is potential mate. And only when they get quite a bit closer is there any even ability to determine the age of that person. And this has been kind of a shocking experience a couple of times, because I will see a girl from 100 yards away and go, damn. And then she will walk up closer and I'll go, oh shit, she's like 15. So what's going on there? Now, the girl who that's happening to, I'm not tracking what I can actually see. I'm tracking like markers. I'm tracking like sports bra and shorts. right? General shape, long hair, like simple things, tall. I'm seeing all of those things, but I literally can't even tell within like 20 years of certainty how old that person is. I'll see, there are a couple of women at the gym who I'll see pretty frequently, and I have no idea within a range of about 25 years how old they are. Seriously, they could be 22, and they could be 42, and I really don't know. They could be anywhere in there, and I just cannot tell. And that's a flaw with my ability to perceive something about another person, but it says something. It says that checking someone out, lighting up that is that a mate pattern, happens way before there's any sort of moral judgment call that can even come into play. And I think that's pretty interesting, and it informs some of the rest of the discussion, so I thought I would mention it. There you go. And so, when you see a woman in an anime, you're immediately going to sexualize her. Whether she's got big old titties, or she's built like a loli, or what, you're going to sexualize her. Because, and it helps that you've been sexualizing her for as long as you've been watching anime. And, you know, following artists on Danburu who sexualize anime characters, following artists on Twitter who sexualize fictional characters all the time, and, you know, following a couple dozen girls on OnlyFans who sexualize themselves, and following a bunch of people on Instagram where they all sexualize themselves. So your automatic is to sexualize somebody, and to think, ooh, it would be fun to fuck them, regardless of their age or whatever else is going on with them in the thing. There it is. So you've been sexualizing this character in your mind, just like Rudy has for a number of episodes, and here's the opportunity. How does it feel? Well, it feels golden and glorious and good, but there's something missing. There's something wrong. There's a little sticking point. There's a misalignment between the ideas and the truths. Uh-oh. Something needs to change. Therefore, this show is giving you a mirror and asking if you like the reflection. And if you don't, congratulations, you're not supposed to. It's just sad some people couldn't look past that. Boom. Awesome. Awesome. Goes on to say, I don't remember who said it or what series it's from, but the best interpretation for dragon fights I've seen is that dragon fire is just the unfortunate side effect of dragon language, and fights are actually just intense conversations. This is what the mountaintop scene felt like to me. It didn't feel like an attack, just a warning, a message to someone who appears to be dragon kind. And that's kind of rad. I agree. And I'm going to leave it there. There are a bunch more comments, and I'm sure a bunch of them are good, but we're already 2.5 hours in into mostly not even a comments discussion, so thank you, Kiki is best girl, for honestly a really, 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 really good comment, and thank you everybody else for writing your comments. I will read through them all. I have read through most of them already, because I read them as they come in, because I get notified for all of my comments. It's part of the way that it works. So, yeah, and, good. Oh, I will answer one other question, which is from Agnes Pain Tips. Is Patreon security okay now? I removed my card details when there was like a security layoff or something, fearing the worst. Yeah, it seems to be okay. The security layoff there's a little information about it, but it seems to be that Patreon moved to using a third-party service instead of an in-house security team, which, as somebody who's worked in startups, makes sense. You want to outsource something like that because then you don't have to have a security team. You can just pay for it. It's like paying a security team for your house when your dog dies, essentially. It's like, is the house safe? I heard that the guard dog is dead. It's like, yeah, the house is safe. They've got a security system now, and it's all good. It should be all good. Also, Patreon doesn't actively process credit cards directly. They process them through Stripe, which is a much larger organization and has much more security stuff in place. So I wouldn't worry about your credit cards. I will also mention two things. One, there's a Kill la Kill video that's very good that you should go watch, and it's $1, and it's on the Patreon. And two, and maybe more interestingly to you, I've set up the recurring subscription billing on Patreon. So now when you sign up for Patreon, you will get billed every month on the day that you signed up, as opposed to if you sign up on the 25th, you'll get billed on the 25th, and then you'll get billed on the 1st, and then every month you'll get billed on the 1st. Instead of that, you will get billed on the 25th, and then the 25th, and then the 25th. I don't know how this works for the 28th of February or the 31st of months that have a 31st. I just don't know, but I assume that it will work okay and all will be well. I hope. This should lead to not having to return money to people because they don't have to they don't get double charged, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I wanted to mention those, and go check out the Patreon if you enjoy this content. Okay, now here's the deal. I didn't expect to be spending 2.5 hours talking about Mushoku Tensei before Mushoku Tensei again, but I have. And so, I'm hungry and a little bit tired, and my throat hurts a little bit. It's only 1:13, so I've got some time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording and start recording. I'm going to stop recording, go make food, eat food, and then we're going to start Mushoku Tensei in earnest for episode 9. Watch the episode, discuss the episode, and be done. Cool? Cool. Alrighty, welcome everyone. I'm Teeaboo, and I am finally actually here to watch Mushoku Tensei episode 9. I just finished recording another 2.5 hours of discussion before this episode. Thought that would all kind of go away. Turns out when you have more discussion, it breeds more discussion, and discussions and conversations just continuously get more complicated as you add more layers to them, as opposed to what you would hope is that they would get less complicated as you solve some of the underlying issues. But when you have a conversation with enough people, and you're only one person talking, it gets complicated really fast, and so you end up having to spend a lot of time just ironing out some basic things, and so that's what we've been doing. Now, I don't think that what we did in that 2.5 hours that I just discussed can be boiled down so simply as ironing out some basic things. I think we talked about some really important concepts in that video, and I would highly recommend that if you haven't gone and seen that 2.5 hour video yet, that you at least go and try to watch the first 15 or 20 minutes of it, because there are some elements there that are going to color and inform the way that we view Mushoku Tensei moving forward. And if you watch this without watching that, it will feel like there's been a bit of a disconnect and like a weird change. You'll be like, what the fuck happened to Teeaboo, maybe? And, well, nothing, but also a lot. So go watch the video and maybe it'll give you some explanation and some understanding of the thought processes that lead to this point where we're at. We just had turning point 1. We had the whole thing with Eris. It was interesting. We addressed all these things in the comments section, and that's fine. Giant beam of light, explosion of unknowns. Ghislaine gets hit by it. Rudy and Eris also get hit by it. Transition going somewhere to somewhere. I'm saying it's teleportation because it has to be. Like, narratively, it has to be. It can't be just the end. It has to be moving to somewhere. It has to be transition, and it has to be movement. And so we're teleporting, so we're movement. And I see right now that the first frames of this episode are very ethereal. Maybe like a heaven space, maybe like an in-between or a liminal space or a limbo. Metaphysiologically, psycho, whatever. That makes sense. That's the space in between change. And that's where we need to return to as a grand change in the environment occurs. And that tracks for me. So that's where we'll be starting off, is somewhere unknown, leading into somewhere unknown. Because the place that is unknown is always something that you get to by journeying through the unknown. Does that make sense? You journey through the most unknown place, and then you find yourself opening up into some other space. It's like the gray mist walls or doors in all the Dark Souls games. Those are the idea there, right? There is everything that you know, and it's explored territory, and you know how to defeat all the monsters in it, and you've proven this by defeating the boss. And then you go up to the wall, and you get this cutscene where you walk through the wall. And then you open up to the other side, and on almost every door that you go through in Dark Souls games, it opens up to a broad new landscape of the unknown, where there's interesting stuff up above and interesting stuff down below, and the path isn't entirely clear, but at least there are a couple of ways to go. And there are probably dangerous things and enemies, and this is the new environment. It's the new space, psychologically. Great. Great, very good. Same idea seems to be present in the first part of this episode, and that sounds good to me. Sounds pretty excellent. I'm gonna do something dangerous now. Okay, here we go. Okay, yep. So, it looks like I'm losing, to some extent, the admiration, and support, financially, of somebody who's been here for forever. Somebody who's in my channel. I'm not gonna name names or anything. It's not fair. That's sad. It comes down to, something really simple. There's a book over here. The book on the bottom. There's a reason that it's on the bottom. I've got 2 books on my shelf here. You might notice that I've removed everything from this shelf, except for a couple things that I think are important. Those are my tea kettle and tea stuff, and 2 books. There's the only thing on my shelf here that's in frame now. Now, this water bottle ends up in frame because this is where I put it, and water is important. Why the tea? What does green tea mean to me? Green tea means that what you put into your body can change your mind. It's a fundamental of how I view the world. What about those 2 books? Well, the book on the top is Marcus Matteau Mestre's Framed Ink. It indicates to me that through careful practice, one can shape art to affect the emotional interpretation of the reader. That is, one can express oneself through media. It can express truth through media that cannot be expressed through words or through other mediums. That's a fundamental to my viewpoint of the world. If it were not true, there would be no point in observing art, and there would be no point in creating. The second book that's there, and the one that's on the bottom of that, and I think is the more important one, is Maps of Meaning. It's a book about the idea that media can contain meaning, that stories are important. That is a fundamental of my belief. I believe that that is true. And I will not renounce that belief unless something better is proven to me. There's a bit of a problem there. There's an unfortunate problem. The problem is that Maps of Meaning, a book that I absolutely agree with, I don't think there is a single word in that book that I disagree with. It is written by a man named Jordan B. Peterson, who a lot of people hate. I mean, genuinely hate, and will not associate with, and will not associate with the ideas of, and will not associate with anyone who associates with the ideas of. He is effectively canceled to a huge portion of the populace. That's fucking scary. And so that makes this scary. I believe in what is written in that book. I am not some idiot fanboy. I am not some sycophant. I am reading the book, I have watched the lectures, and I agree with them. It has taken me years to incorporate even one fractional piece of the wisdom that is present in them, and there are bits and pieces of the wisdom that is in them that I reject and I disagree with. I am, strangely, capable of thinking for my own, and by owning this book or agreeing with its premises, I am not aligning myself in whole with a person. Nor am I aligning myself with the people who align themselves with that person, which is the bigger problem. That is not saying that I could not be a fool who is being manipulated by some greater system. I admit these possibilities, and I hope that you see, via my admission of these possibilities, that I am serious about this. This isn't done flippantly. This is important to me. It might not be important to you. There might be ideas that you disagree with in there, but I will not stand for people dismissing a thinker out of hand because they disagree with one or more of his thoughts. And I certainly will not stand for people dismissing me as a thinker, which I am, for agreeing with the thoughts of one person simply because they have a predisposed judgment against that person. Most people who are against Jordan B. Peterson have not watched or read or heard or learned anything from him except what they have heard third or fourth hand through biased media sources. This is true of almost everything in the modern era, so you need to be very careful about what you consume and whether you believe it. I think that the people who are against Jordan Peterson may not have their ideas together, because I currently, from my limited point of view, do not understand how you could disagree with those ideas, unless they were twisted when they were presented to you. But I admit that I am fallible, and I can only see one small piece. So, here's how dialogue and discourse works. I share a thing that I believe with you. You now have the opportunity to criticize me and criticize the thing. If there's something about Jordan Peterson that you think I don't know, that I probably should know before I make a judgment call about him, share it with me and try to convince me. I will be open to it. But I will warn you that I currently believe this, and again, I've spent a couple of years coming to the conclusion that I believe this, because I did not believe it at first. I thought it was stupid and wrong. And then I kept thinking about it, and it incepted its way into my brain, and the idea that's present in it feels correct to me, and it has changed the way that I structure my life. And as it has changed the way that I structure my life has become closer to the ideal that I want it to be. And that seems to be proof to me that the ideas that are present in the thing, when applied, work. So, disagreement is fine, but I will not let people demand or hold me hostage or hold their money hostage by saying that they will not support me if I believe in a thing or if I am honest about a thing, because that is the way to become worthless. Me, to become worthless. That is the way to lie until I no longer exist. To compromise my values at every turn, at every point, until I'm just another milquetoast, washed up idiot making bland, uninteresting content with no opinion to it. I hope that's not what you want. If that is what you want, or if you're going to demand that I disassociate myself with someone that I respect because you disagree with that person's premises, or more accurately, because you have heard that their premises are evil and should be disagreed with from someone you trust, because you've heard from, let's say, some more news who Jordan Peterson is, or you've watched ContraPoints, a thinker who I think is brilliant and wonderful and creates amazing videos, has her own video on Jordan Peterson and his premises, and sees it from her own perspective. I have watched those videos, and all of ContraPoint's videos. I like them a lot. My point is, I will not be silenced. I will not shut up about my truth. Because I think it's not just my truth. I think it's a universal truth. And so I will share it. And in the sharing, I open myself up to vulnerability because I tell you what is true, what I really believe. And it might hurt me very immensely to do this. I might lose a couple $1,000s this month for doing this, like half my income. Fine. Very well. 3 years ago, I was starving, and I chose to follow my ideals. I will follow my ideals until I'm back starving. I don't mind. I really don't mind. It's really nice to live in a good place. It's really nice to eat good food. It's really nice to be able to purchase things that I need. It's really nice to not be afraid, but I would give it all up if the alternative was to lie to myself. Because I've spent too much of my life wasted lying to myself about what I believe and what I want and what I'm seeking. And the one of the only things that I have found that grants any meaning to this world is that book, Maps of Meaning. Seems like a reasonable supposition that a book, if it does what it says on the front and it provides a map of meaning, that it might be very valuable, that it might be useful. And I have found it to be such. The discussion goes on in the Discord. That's fine. I'm sorry for derailing this discussion, but it needs to happen somewhere, and this is the video that I'm recording today. That's just the nature of it. I'm sorry. This is my hardline stance. I'm going to take this stance. If you can provide me with information that makes me question my belief in that book, because it's not even a belief in a person. Jordan Peterson could go and start claiming that everybody should hump the sky as much as they can, and we should all wear panties on our heads and fuck each other with fists instead of penises. Like, he could do something insane, and it'd be like, okay, well, the guy's a fucking idiot, and that's crazy. But I'd still keep this book, because the thoughts that are in the book have nothing to do with the moral character of the person.
I might be scum, but I'm still a damn good mechanic, and you can take that to the bank. So don't go judging a man's skill by his character.
He could do something insane, and it'd be like, okay, well, the guy's a fucking idiot, and that's crazy. But I'd still keep this book, because the thoughts that are in the book have nothing to do with the moral character of the person. Who wrote them? It's like claiming that the fundamental institutions of our culture are corrupt because they were written by corrupt men. Duh. Like, of course. Yeah, I know that Jefferson and Franklin and others did bad things and lived in their world in the wrong way and did things that were effectively evil and unforgivable. They still wrote some of the most important documents of modern political theory. You cannot disregard one because of the character of the brilliant men and women who contributed to it. You cannot do that. If you do, you're a fool. And frankly, and I'm sorry to say this, I don't need you. I don't need you. If you're not willing to think, to really think, to put aside your prejudice and think, the way that I'm doing when I say and mean and believe that if you show me information that it will actually change my moral viewpoint on Jordan Peterson, then I will change my viewpoint. I expect you to be able to do the same. And if you've enjoyed my content over the past 2 years, any part of it, or any of my insights about how media is important, then guess what? You don't realize it, but you agree with Jordan Peterson. Sorry. Deal with that inconsistency. How can you agree with his ideas? I thought he was a bigot and a racist and a monster. Because I don't think he's a bigot, a racist, or a monster. I just had somebody in my Discord ask me straight up, so you don't think bigotry is evil? I've seen no evidence that Jordan B. Peterson is a bigot, except by the broadest, most fallacious definitions. Definitions so expansive that they include anyone, from my perspective. Definitions that I would not want to use in the world. I don't see it. Maybe I'm blind. Open my eyes. Show me the truth. I'm ready to parse it. I'm ready to have my mind changed. But I'm not ready to give up what I believe in just because you ask me to, or just because you demand it of me. Absolutely not. I am what I am, and you can never take that away from me.
Confiscate her scissor blade.
Ma'am! No way! You'll never take this away from me! Never!
That's a little interesting and heated. I had to get it out. I'm sorry. Let's watch Mushoku Tensei episode 9. We have teleported to somewhere new. What's it gonna be? I don't know. I do not have any fucking clue. Beep beep timer. Oh, hey! It's the you who is you! Yep, that sucks. It was all a dream. Oh. He's CG. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry, what the fuck? Hey. Oh, that seems about right. Hitogami, the man god. So you and the other... the superego and the observer. Are you? Just fully ignored. Ah. That's very funny because you've already had the attitude change and it's working. Hmm. Sensei janakute. Ah. There's a not a fit. It's not fitting. Yeah. Very funny. Soka. I don't think so. Hmm. Oh. The wicked dragon god. So you were brought here by the evil force. Because of course, yeah. Destruction is creation, chaos is chaos. Yeah. Order never Order never moves anybody. Hmm. That got your attention. You've been teleported to the demon continent! Didn't I ask if we were going to a demon continent? Ah! It's Hunter Hunter. Mm-hmm. So you are entering the unknown and it is scary. You are going to need more power. You will die. You will die without assistance. Hey. Listen. Okay. Rely on the man you wake up near and help him. So when you find yourself in an empty unknown, rely on the people around you and assist them? That seems accurate. That seems mythologically correct. Hello. Who made the fire? I just realized that. Eris is alive! And here! That's pretty good. Is that his staff, or is that another staff? Oh, there's the man. Oh shit, he's got the red! So, time to find out whether your presuppositions about these people are correct. Are they evil? Because this guy seems to have made you a fire and not murdered you. So maybe, just maybe, he's not gonna murder you. Yeah, willing to close his eyes. Trying all his different languages. I wonder which language it is. Ghislaine. Yeah, she's elsewhere. Again, there can't be the mentor. You need the unknown. But it's not a no. Cool. Yeah, you're real far from home now. Whoa, I got chills. Longer than you can imagine. How long would it take to get back home? It's the classic. Oh, okay. Swearing it. Why? What's his deal? Where's his, reputation and community? Ask and you shall receive. Yeah. Okay, so they are... Things in the world are not like you have been told. Things in the world are not as you have been told. He's like, this is comfortable. This is expected. Yeah, you have the cutting edge, the ability to determine truth from fiction. Yeah, he'd much rather have, like, a friend. Completely against her own instincts. That's great. Bulbobodias! Oh, that's wonderful. I still don't trust you. That's some anime shit. Yeah, right? Yeah, right? Ha. But then I'd have to admit weakness. This is great. Yeah! Yeah! Somebody who didn't like the Spurred very much. It's a pretty interesting revelation that that is happening. It feels pretty relevant to me. That what you know is not what you know, it's what you've been told. It's pretty relevant to me. Hardship, but traveling together. Bonding. Whoa, that's a big thing! Whoa. Oh. Yeah, what does an opened eye actually mean, though? Nobility. Huh? Arrival? Cool. Yeah. Just like you would be to them. Yeah. Do not stand in the way. Oh! Whoa! Oh. Ah, good thing to be. Yeah, good move. It's a symbol. Oh, you come with a lineage? What? Roxy Migurdia. Migurd tribe. Ooh. So that means Roxy is telepathic, but can't telepathically speak with her people because she's an outcast? That adds some layers. Or maybe she can telepathically speak with them. It's just new. Look at that weird thing! It's so weird. Why is he so downed? Oh no. Oh god. 20 years ago. Guess she ages differently. Yeah, you thought she was a lolicon? She's probably 100. Yeah, she's safe, man. It's all good. Layers and unspoken layers. Oh, Dawson. Fucking idiot. That doesn't happen. No, you're an idiot. No. That doesn't happen yet. What is this? What a stupid scene. Not stupid, sorry, there's probably nothing stupid, but what a silly scene. Ooh. Is that a natural pass? No! Whoa! Yeah, there's something about that. Maybe harmed when he was a children? Oh. Is constantly saving children, huh? What's the goal? Good question. Oh. Redeem my tribe, my species. Seems really tough, at least. But it's possible to overcome it. We see a village that has right here. But she's overcome it? The truth. Wow. Almost, almost Yuasa-esque there. I like, in terms of, that was interesting. Sweet. Those are the best stories. Yeah, the darkness of humanity, what we're possible, what we can do. Damn, they toke the fuck up. Spattered spear. Okay. Fallen hero. Hero now. Are they like Lord of the Rings rings? Lord of the Rings rings. Yep. Power that corrupts, metaphorically, right? Weapons that corrupt. Cool. I mean, not cool, but cool idea. Self-consuming destruction. Got it. Got it, good. So that's why you save children. Yeah, that's right on. That's solidly resonant. Cool story, bro. No sarcasm. Help him and he will help you. Kind of like the 40 years you spent, right? Let me see it through his eyes. Both sets of eyes looking through one person, becoming integrated. Nice. I accept the call. Yes. I can accept the call. I cannot promise anything, but I'll do what I can. Boom. Rock and roll, baby. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Rock and fucking roll. Oh, wait, who is that voice? Oh, I remember who that is. I don't remember who that is. That voice, though. Is she, somebody in Kaon? Mugi? She might be Mugi. Ooh, a sword. What's in the pouch, though? What did the mother give him? That's like an actually important thing. Oh, the full curtsy. So chill and laid back. Nice, you did it! You managed to communicate. Wow! Wow! Mm-hmm. What is that? Oh my god, she just got a sword. That's cool, though. That's good. Oh, was that the stuff that was in the pouch? I wonder. Protect outside, help inside. Good. Give and they'll take, like a negotiated situation, like society, like humans. A friend who seems like an enemy, but then you determine that they're just a friend underneath. Wow. And then you get to work together after making the conscious choice to accept their difficulties. Yes. Yeah. Oops, sorry, I messed with the audio. Fuck, sorry. The value of a life and the first job. Sounds like a couple of useful things to get to. Once you've figured out that you can make connections with people and you can leave your house and you can go out on your own and you can make interactions with people and you can make friends and you can interact and travel to get together and you figure out some more things about yourself. That seems like a good next step is finding something to do with your time. Okay. I think this is a pretty darn good episode of Mushoku Tensei. I'm sort of viewing it through 2+ lenses now, continuously, which is weird. It's a weird experience. There's the literal thing that's going on, you know, our character literally has this experience as far as we're aware. Literally ends up here. First, immediately goes into doubt. I see, it's over. It was all a dream, it's all a lie. And then pop comes God, who introduces himself as the man god, right? Hitogami. Just what I look like. Well, what do you look like? And the answer is, I can't get a good look at you. Why can't he get a good look at him? That's a good question. my theory would be that you can never really see the entire whole truth, that it's an ethereal and beyond you. You have to be aware of that, because you might get an outline of it, but the whole thing is not going to clarify itself. It's going to be misty and vague. I'm a god, the man god. Now that's interesting, isn't it? A god, the man god. What is the man god? Hitogami? I don't know. Maybe it's the god that's within you. To me, that's what I would expect. I would expect that it's the superego, or even just the ego. It's the voice that judges the voice. You are the voice, you do things, you act, and then there's a voice within you that is your conscience that judges. And that's man, because it's you, it's human, it's part of you, but it's also not you, because it's not the thing that acts. It's the thing that judges. It's like a god. So it's a god, the man god. That's how I would see it anyway. Now, the man god might be a literal thing in this world with literal power. That's reasonable. But I think functionally, archetypally, it works this way as well. And it might work in many other ways because it seems to be complicated. You're leading quite an interesting life. Oh, I get it. You're a voyeur. A voyeur, huh? Yes, you're funny, so I watch over you. Fully admits it. He twitches and he's angry. He's frustrated. Our main character is frustrated by what is a frustrating interaction with the unknown. Or, if we view it as the God consciousness, the piece of you that knows best, maybe, the conscience, interacting with your conscience is not very fun, because it doesn't really give you very good answers. It can't tell you what to do, it will tell you what not to do. Socrates knew this, right? His whole life was built around, and his whole principle, a lot of it, was built around considering a possibility and then doing the thing that the voice inside your head told you, not doing the thing that the voice inside your head told you not to do, including die. Socrates died for that ideal. Now, how much that story is true and how much of it is fiction is unknown, but it's mythological. It's valuable as a story. It's somebody who died for his ideal. People told him to renounce it, and he said no. Even though he could have. It wasn't even renouncing it. He didn't even have to renounce the idea. He could have just left. Could have just run away. Could have just fled Athens. But he didn't. He died. He let them kill him. He chose to let them kill him. That's weird. Anyway, when you listen to that conscience, there's a problem, which is that the conscience doesn't seem aligned with you. It tells you all these horrible things about yourself that you don't want to hear. You let me dream it's really something something. Was it fun watching me have a good time? Well, are you not entertained? Well, no, actually, there's been a mistake here. You're fine in your body. You're just here talking to me right now. Let me give you some advice. And RUDY is Luciferian, this is Luciferian ignorance. This is everything that I know is everything that I will need to know. Everything that I already know is everything that I will need to know. This is arrogance. There's a big difference between this and somebody going, I think this, which is, I hope what I'm doing. I think X is true. I'm willing to hear more information. I am constantly seeking more information so that I can determine more effectively whether X is true, or whether there's like a Y or a Z that's more true than X. That would be really interesting. But if I were to come at you and say, the truth is this, and anyone who disagrees with me is blank, 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 there's a problem there. So he goes, oh, I know what you're up to. I understand you. But he doesn't, of course. He presumes to understand his consciousness, God, perhaps. And he assumes what that consciousness, that whatever it is going to ask of him is going to be just an attitude change, the way that many people have asked of him before. That won't work. Well, it would if it actually happened, unfortunately. It's just way too difficult for that to happen. And it will never happen by being told that it should happen. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm talking about now, not your past life. Then why do I look like this? Because this is your mental image of you. You haven't fixed that. Your image of yourself is still as a 40-year-old neat. But you're not that person anymore. Not really. So there's something disconnected. Something in you feels like you're still that unworthy person. You have to fix that and forgive it. This is your mental form. Your body is fine. So your body will be back to normal when you wake up. Great. What a shock. Your mental and physical selves are so different. How weird. So what do you want me to do? Go back to my world because I don't belong here. Just get out. And he says, I can't send you anywhere outside this six-sided world. Anyway, so first off, six-sided world. I don't know if I want to read into that. I know that it's just like the title of the world or the name of the world. Sounds like a D6 to me, like a six-sided die is immediately what I think. When I think of a thing with sides, I think of that. But it's also dimensionality, right? We live in a fourth dimensional space, but you could consider other things to be dimensions. Maybe it's something along those lines. I don't know. Can just theorize. But what's really interesting is that this force, whatever it is, whether it's inside of RUDY or outside of RUDY, and it seems to be both, maybe. It's man god, right? This force, whatever it is, this positive force that seems to be light and seems to be helping him and doesn't, sometimes you get light imagery around an evil character where it's like they're too perfect, they're too light. We don't get any of that feeling from this guy, from this thing. It's very human in a lot of ways. Inhuman, but human. It laughs at jokes or funny misunderstandings. It takes things in stride. It doesn't seem to be trying to manipulate him too much. It seems to be generally well-meaning, and that's important. But it doesn't have much power, it seems. That's an interesting idea. You didn't make me reincarnate into this world. And he says, the wicked dragon god is better at that sort of thing. Because the hero god is not the one that fixes things. The thing that sets change into motion is entropy, chaos, disorder, monsters, dragons. I think maybe an additional layer to view this in is that your conscience has no power on its own. It has no power except its power to determine your actions, right? And you, as a being, as an animal, as a creature, are fundamentally a being of chaos, being of disorder. If you let yourself, you will fall into disarray. And so your conscience is sort of like a god watching over that cannot really influence things or generate change. You, the thing that came from evil, has to be the thing that generates the change. How interesting is that? The thing that sets change into motion is entropy, chaos, disorder, monsters, dragons, bad things. So if the wicked dragon god is the one who set things into motion and brought RUDY here and somehow led to this mana catastrophe and some of the other things and maybe the thing in the sky and maybe some other stuff, and maybe some of the movement that we're seeing across this world, maybe we're part of a much bigger game. We don't even know it. And that's pretty interesting. I think this tracks with reality and with the way that we tell stories. We call it an antagonist. The antagonist is the one who drives the action, not the protagonist. The protagonist is usually static. The state of nature is good. State of nature is stable, right? We go from steady state world to the antagonist acts, and the antagonist's action sets the protagonist's world into chaos. The protagonist has to do the devolution into the unconscious, into the psyche, into the ego, or into the dissolution of the ego, the darkness, the below, the underworld, and in doing so, they come up with something true, with something valuable. They bring that up, they reincorporate themselves, and they direct themselves towards something better and come back to fix the overworld that is society as well. This tracks. But it's the dragon god, it's the evil, it's the wicked. The force of evil is the force that creates change. It's like a D&D party. You put a D&D party in a world and you're like, go ahead, kids. Nothing's ever really interesting is going to happen. They're going to get drunk all the time and try to fuck barmaids, like, actually. And they'll get really frustrated because they're like, where are the monsters for me to fight? Well, you as a dungeon master have to take the part of the antagonist. You have to take the part of evil, moving within the world and causing things that cause the protagonist's life to be thrown into chaos. And they'll love you for it if you destroy all their shit. My protagonists have a tavern. I have to kind of explode the tavern every once in a while in order to get them off their asses and get them doing something. Because it's like, okay, yeah, there are some evil people over there and they're doing evil things, but they're not doing the evil things to me. Oh shit, they're doing the evil things to me. Let's go kill them. Done. Easy, right? This is a part of the thing. So will you hear me out? Just hear me out. He says, fine, I give up. You're going to do what you want to do anyway. As things are, you'll die. Well, the demon continent is harsh. It sucks. Can you handle it? Are you willing? Are you capable? And he tells him the lay of the land. You've been teleported to the unknown, to the scariest place that you've ever been, scarier than any place you've ever been, and you're going to have to survive. Are you up for it? And he's not sure. He basically says, no, but you're going to tell me anyway. I can't stop you, right? He's not actively jumping up to the call to adventure, right? This is the call to adventure to some extent. Are you willing to do this difficult task in order to achieve great goals? Unspecified. And you go, well, not really. And what happens is, if you go, well, not really, the adventure comes and it rolls right over you anyway, and you just get mangled by it, because the world is always changing, and chaos will destroy you. The world is this way, and it goes, and you go, ow! So the actual answer is what Rudy does later in the episode, which is that he gets the emotional resonance from the story of Sigurd, whatever. And he gets the emotional resonance from the story, and that lets him choose, yes. Choose to take up the mantle. Choose to take up the sword. Choose to take up the great lineage of fighting for things that you don't know what they are. Right. When you wake up, there will be a man nearby. Rely on that man. Help him, and he will help you. Okay. So, there's a metaphor here, as well as a general real truth, which is like, okay, so Rudy's actually getting teleported to a new place with Eris, and there will actually be a person there, and he actually needs to help somebody so that he can get helped as well. That all makes sense. But there's something else to this, I think, in that more metaphorical context, and that would be something along the lines of, Rudy has trained magic and made relationships to the point where he can and should no longer stay within the safe confines of the family. Instead of just having him go out into the noble, straightforward, relatively chaotic, but also relatively stable world of peoples and normal things in society, which is what would happen if he were to stay in the Boreas household or the Grey Rat household in the city, and like keep training with Eris and do all that stuff. It would be all very normal. But that's not how it feels. He has to go out into the unknown. Out into the unknown, because that's what's outside of the family. You're in your family, you're in your house, you're safe, you're comfortable. You got school, and that's the most uncomfortable thing you have, is going out into the world and going into school. And then there's the wide open world beyond that, and you're left with nothing, right? It's maybe you and maybe somebody that you know. You know, lots of people move and go to college in a new city, and they've only got maybe one friend or maybe none. It's you and somebody that you know. And what is the thing that you should do when you're in a situation like this, when you are facing the dangerous unknown and it could eat you, and there are monsters in the forest, which is the truth about any city you go to. You go to a city and it's a dangerous forest with monsters in the dark places, in the alleyways. And great benefits up at the top of the skyscrapers, but how do you know how to get up there? There might be monsters on the way there, you don't know. So you're in a new landscape and you need something to orient yourself around, and Man God kind of gives it to him. He gives it to him. He says, there's going to be a man there, rely on him, and he will help you, and you will help him. That seems to be accurate, right? You get to a new city, find some new friends, and start relying on them. Ask them for help. And you'll be surprised to find that people love helping other people when they're asked for it. They actually really like it. So that's maybe not a bad idea from the perspective of the show. You start a new journey into a new place, find some people, find some homies, figure out what they're about, and figure out whether you can share a fire together, and then journey through life together. And then maybe you could become more than that, more than just temporary companions, but like allies. Like seriously allies, who to some extent know the deeper struggles of each other's hearts and are willing to help each other work toward them. Past obstacles toward them. It seems like a pretty valuable idea. Okay, so we wake up in the new state of being. Eris is here, the man is here, we recognize that he is a Spurd. We kind of freak out just a little bit. Rudy's a little bit scared. But he holds it together, and he realizes that this guy isn't murdering him. So suddenly there's a clash. What you've been told and what you're experiencing aren't quite correct. They don't quite line up. You've been told that Spurds are all murderous monsters, but this one doesn't seem to be a murderous monster. At the very least, he's not actively trying to murder you right now. Seems like he's built a fire and is trying to make you feel comfortable. Something's wrong. So either he's lying, or somebody was lying to you. And you need to determine which it is before you can move on with the world. The reason I said when this happens that this seems pretty relevant to me is that, I mean, I've got like half a dozen people who are telling me that just believing in that book right there, believing that it's correct, or agreeing in any way with the man who wrote it, makes me wrong. And that baffles me, because nothing that I've seen him write or say would lead me to any kind of conclusion like that. So I don't understand how somebody could have come to a conclusion like that. Something is wrong. Either I'm misreading this entire book and it's actually a bigoted, racist text full of horrible things, or they're misreading the situation and he's not a bigoted racist, or there's somebody lying telling you that he's a bigoted racist. Something is wrong. Something is wrong in our perceptions of reality, because the man exists and the things that he has said exist, and the way that I see them and what I think about them seem to be so diametrically opposed from what some other people think that it makes me wonder if we're looking at the same thing, quite genuinely. And I think the answer is that we're not. I think the answer is genuinely that we're not, that I'm looking at the book and that somebody else might be looking at Twitter and their friends and what their friends think and what the media thinks, and that might not be the way to go. And that's a little bit scary. You know, I told the story about cornflakes in the Kill la Kill video, but I'll tell it again here because I think it's important. It fits this exact idea. This idea that everything you've been told about Spurds, for example, might be wrong. Hi, editing me again. I just realized that I promised to tell the cornflake story, and at no point do I actually tell the cornflake story, which is fucking unfortunate because it's kind of a really, really good example for something. So here it is. I was talking with a friend of mine in person the other day. He said to me, oh, I found out this really interesting thing about cornflakes. Did you know that the inventor of cornflakes invented cornflakes in order to stop people from masturbating? He thought that they were so bland that they would make people stop masturbating. And I went, that doesn't seem right. Let's look into that. And we found a number of interesting things over the process of investigating this. First off, if you search on Google cornflakes masturbation, all you get is confirmation bias, is articles that say that that's the case. You find the lie itself because you searched for the thing and it will deliver to you uncaringly the thing that you searched for, thus confirming for you that that is the reality, which is scary. If you scroll a little bit further, which not everyone does, you'll get to the Snopes article, which dispels the myth, essentially. It's not true. It was invented as part of a food processing element and seen immediately as something that might be very valuable. We think of it as an easy process now, but nobody really knew that you could turn corn into flakes, that you could flake a grain like that, and the process of doing it was invented, and it had to be invented at some point, and it was quite a closely guarded secret, to the point where somebody named something Post stole the secret, left the sanitarium where they invented it and used it, and founded his own company, which became Post and then General Foods. So that's pretty interesting, right? That idea that this thing is much more complicated and much more interesting. And actually, there are some lessons there about like interpersonal trust and the value of ideas, as opposed to these lessons about somebody trying to instill their principles upon your life via some weirdly misguided food product. But then what's more interesting is that the lie about somebody trying to instill a false viewpoint of reality upon your viewpoint of reality is itself an example of a rumor that instills a false viewpoint of reality onto your reality. And it's viral, it spreads, it moves from person to person, and you have this kind of urge to share it because it's interesting and it's exciting and it's like weird and it means something a little bit. You think it, we laugh it off. It's like, haha, so silly that cornflakes could cause you to stop masturbating. But there's this underlying thought that kind of happens there that's like, maybe cornflakes are a part of the system. Maybe they're just a corporation trying to manipulate me, as all these corporations do, and I know that they do because I know that there are all these other examples of that. But then you wonder how many of those examples are themselves rumors, and you wonder how much is true, like truly true, and how many of the things that you hear you should actually spend some time investigating before you fully incorporate and believe them. And that seems to be a pretty interesting premise, because it turns out that the cornflakes thing is not that true and not entirely false. The guy who invented it was Mr. Kellogg, was a pretty Puritan individual and had some pretty silly ideas about austerity and asceticism. But he didn't invent the process of flaking corn in order to sell bland food. He did it because it was valuable to turn one kind of food into a easily packaged, easily sold, easily consumed cereal, because dried corn is pretty hard to eat, frankly. And if you can take dried corn and make it something that you can literally eat dry, you can eat cornflakes raw. You don't want to, but you can. Or more easily, just pour some milk on it and you have what can be sold as a moderately healthy meal. Now, I disagree with that. If you're just eating pure cornflakes and milk, you're going to be having a bad time, probably. But you can survive off of it for a good long while. It does the bread and milk thing, and that's most of what you need. And so that's a pretty valuable thing to be able to do. So the assumption that this valuable and genuine advance of technology is somehow mysteriously, evilly, religiously insidious is itself mysteriously, psychologically insidious. I think that's important to note, especially when we're talking about a moment in the show where Rudy realizes that potentially everything that he's heard about an entire group of people might be false. And then we get to watch Eris, who has those firm beliefs held much more firmly because they've been her beliefs for her entire life. We get to watch her difficulty struggling with the clash that occurs when your beliefs don't match reality. And that's pretty fucking interesting, so let's go ahead and check it out. This idea that everything you've been told about Spurds, for example, might be wrong. And you can transition this over to our real world really, really easily, right? You know, take a Southern Christian, right-wing, conservative young man who's never met somebody of color in their entire life, and they're going to have some wrong ideas about people of color. Say they live in a place where the job market has been hard, and so likely the place, in a lot of ways, some of the people within that culture blame the job market being hard on immigration because they don't understand how the economy works. Because the economy is way too complicated to understand. I don't understand it either. I'm not throwing shade, but like, to blame your lack of jobs on immigration is wrong. It's false. You have incorporated a lie. And if you take that person and you drop them into a Hispanic household for a couple of weeks, they're going to come out of it with a very different perspective. Because they're going to go into it thinking, those Mexicans are all, dumb, and they're all stealing my jobs, and they're all, conniving. And what you find out is that they're people. That people are people are people are people. And when you actually get dropped into that situation. So it's like, it's completely possible to find something that's not true and believe it so wholly that it changes your entire worldview, even when it's not true, and refuse to change your worldview no matter who tells you otherwise, even when it's not true or not correct, even when it's harming you or harming others. Like harming the Spurds, for example, because they're outcast despite being noble. This is the most noble character we've seen in the entire show so far. He's got a couple miles on Paul. Paul's got a sword and a nice body, but he's a liar and a rapist and a cheater and an adulterer. He's also a father, and he's to some extent doing his best, so some respect there. But, like, come on, this guy is viewed as a monster, despite being the most noble person in the story so far. That seems to ring true to me. That seems to be almost archetypal, doesn't it? Right? The greatest good receives the greatest punishment. That seems correct. Now, not just, but it seems correct, seems true, seems like what the world actually does. If you want a secular example, take Galileo. Said that the universe was one way, everybody fucking killed him. A number of years later, everybody's like, oops, yeah, you're right. My bad. Can't unkill him. So it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder about colored perceptions, especially negative colored perceptions. Anything that causes you to reject something might be something you want to re-examine, specifically to reject something. Now, things that cause you to accept something, accept a new idea, can be dangerous too. But things that ask you to close, ideas that ask you to close your mind, that say anyone associated with this topic over here is wrong and evil. And that's what I've gotten in my comments. People implying, very specifically, that I am evil for agreeing with words written by a man. Now, I agree that agreeing with certain words could be evil. If I were to read Mein Kampf and agree with Hitler, that would probably be fucking evil. Probably wouldn't be good, But the words in that book aren't evil, and neither am I. And people are coming at me, and they're wrong. So there's some mismatch between the reality that exists, the reality as I see it, and the reality as some other people see it. And we got to figure out what that is, because we cannot continue this way. Okay. And he speaks, and he's shocked, and it's wonderful. The ability to speak. Okay, so we talked about Rudy's power in the comments section, right? Rudy gathers this power, and power to some extent is speech. It's the ability to express yourself. And now he's gained multiple forms of speech, the ability to speak to people who are not like him. That's very powerful. To speak different languages. That's very powerful. But the ability to speak different languages is more than the ability to speak different languages. Now, in this world, it's very literal, but the ability to speak the language of academic criticism and the ability to speak the language of YouTube, bro, yeah, what's up, guys, smash the like button. Those are two different forms of speech, and both are useful for getting information to different people. Having more forms of speech lets you speak to more people, and that's very valuable. Okay, so he puts out some of his core precepts, core understanding. I don't understand your question. You two fell from the sky. Human children are frail. I made a fire to warm you. There's no, I saw you and I felt this, so I did this. It's just, this was the way it was. This was the way it was. This was the way it was. Now, thinking back, this is the first indicator that this is a person who sees the world in very clear right or wrongs. Very clear, like, he saved them. I made a fire to warm you because, duh, you two fell from the sky and you are frail, so I made a fire to warm you. Otherwise, you might die. What else would I do? So we request about Ghislaine, and he's curious. Aren't you frightened? And he says something very smart here. There are two very smart things, I think. First thing that Rudy does that's very smart, very, very intelligent. When you're with a potentially violent person, a scary person, like this guy, right? He's big, he's scary, and everything you've heard about Spurds is that they are violent and scary and monsters. So you should be careful in this circumstance. But not too careful. And what I mean is, when he asks, aren't you afraid of me? Your answer should not be the lie, which is, no, I'm not afraid of you. Because they'll read the lie and they'll, like a predator, you know, you don't run from a bear. You do not run from a bear. You stand your ground and you try to yell and look big. Because if you turn and you run from a bear, the predator's after you. So if this Spurd was himself a monster, and Rudy were to lie and say, no, I'm not afraid, that indicates victimhood. That indicates prey. And it might go really badly. So instead, he couches it in rationale. He admits to some extent that he has the feeling of being afraid, but that he feels that it would be rude. It would be rude to be afraid of you. That doesn't say that I'm not afraid of you. It just says that I'm not acting out the fear, right? The instinct might still be there, which is interesting. And this guy finds that strange and interesting, which I think tracks. I think that tracks. You're not afraid of the unknown? Well, I am, but that seems kind of silly. Oh, that seems like an interesting perspective you have, child. Come with me. I'm interested in you. So Eris hops up and we see the opposite side. Okay, I'm sorry, we don't get there yet. Demon Continent. How long will this take? A long time. Something weird happened. And he says, I will get you back. It's like, okay, man, what? Abandoning you here would damage the Spurd tribe's reputation. So we've got a guy with a goal, which is to fulfill his reputation. Eris wakes up, and she acts exactly as expected, which is horrified. And this is sort of the way that you'd expect her to act, right? If she's been taught forever that these people are monsters, this is the way that you act. This is exactly it. Ah, it's a monster. Ah, run away, run away, run away. Cover myself in something and hide and close my eyes. It takes her a really long time to figure out that this guy is not trying to kill her. Time that she could have not been wasting figuring it out. Time that she could have spent interacting with the person and learning from him, right? Instead of dismissing this individual as wrong and evil and bad by fiat? Because you say so? Like, this is exactly what's happening in my Discord. That person and all the people that agree with him are evil. Why? Well, because I said so. Okay, show me. Okay, they sent me a link. Okay, I don't think that this shows evil. We seem to have different definitions of evil. Well, so you agree with bigotry. Whoa. What are you defining as bigotry? This is the conversation that's going on in my Discord right now. That's pretty interesting. It feels to me like a lot of people putting a sheet over their heads and running away from what might be true. I won't even claim that it's true. I think it is. But people are running away from it and refusing to look at it and just going, no, he's evil. He's going to murder me. I have to bury my head in the sand. It boggles my mind. It's baffling. And our feeling toward Eris is baffled here as well. It's like, the fuck are you doing, girl? This is dumb. This is really dumb. You're not making any progress. She blames it on a dozen other things. I'm sorry I broke my promise. I'm sorry I did all these other things. She opens her eyes and looks and cries even more. Oh, so I'm the weird one? Yes, you're the weird one, but I have no complaints. It feels nice to be at least taken at face value. At least not judged immediately. At least not dismissed offhand. At least not called a racist and a bigot and then thrown away. Feels pretty nice. Feels really good. And so we see the actual physical struggle of trying to overcome your prejudice in Eris. I've heard that you're a monster. Are you gonna kill me? And you find out that, no, he's a person. Wow, that's really interesting. He's a person. And he's a person who has ideas that are founded in like, real foundations. Like thoughts that aren't just manifest out of malice or psychosis or insanity. He's not just... It's not easy to explain people like that. People aren't like that. People aren't just evil. Even the most evil people aren't just evil. They think they're doing something right. That's a scary thought because it means, and this is something that has been thrown at me, back at me during this conversation. Idealism is a hell of a drug is a quote from the person who left my Discord this morning. Or today. And I agree. I fully agree. It's something to be very careful around. And I'm being very careful. But I don't see other people being careful. And they should be. They really should be. But through all this process of crying and screaming and hiding and apologizing and figuring it all out, we come to a little bit of an understanding and we get past the immediate fear. Anyone can be friends if they understand each other, says Rudius. A powerful idea. One that seems altogether false in the modern day. Because nobody tries to understand each other. People just yell their thoughts. And if you claim to disagree with them or have any problem, you're evil and a monster. And you're attacking them. That's what I keep seeing. Anyone who disagrees with me is actively attacking me and is a threat to my existence. Think? I don't think that's the way that it is. It's not the way that it is for me. But people who are actively threatening me, that's different. My father is such a liar. This is so great. Our mother is such a liar. It takes a whole of like a minute for her to come completely around from tears and desperation and fear to, oh God, everything that I knew before was wrong and the people who were telling me all these things were lying to me. Yell's curled up and made it say, it might be your friend if you ask him, opens the door to her. But please say something too. So Rudy finds himself mediating conflict, mediating relationships, and he finds out that he's pretty good at it. And this is another element of power. The ability to get in the way. The ability to obstruct conflict. It's pretty cool. And as soon, this is like Mako Mankanchoku presuming friendship. As soon as the friendship is stated, Roxy is, oh yes, we can be friends. She loves to have the excuse. And so they become good friends. And it all works. Rudyard just brushes it off. She's an asshole. It all works out. How the hell did this rumor spread anyway? How weird. Well, here we go. Long journey ahead, stranded in an unknown land. Off into the wild beyond. It's the start of our adventure! The Demon Continent! And we sort of just montage through it. It's very kind of Lord of the Rings montage-y. Big landscapes, walking around, finding stuff, navigating our way, staying under rocks, trying to stay cool, existing, slaying giant tortoises. Rad. It's just cool. It's a fun exploration of this world. Okay. So, unclear how to read this yet because we don't know how the man eye viewer thing works, but this is a cool, like, fundamental concept. Eris goes, that thing's really cool. You get to be able to see so much. And he goes, man, I wish I didn't have it. And she goes, why? Give it to me. Well, I wonder what being able to see so much actually causes. Because you might be able to see reality. And reality sucks. Reality's very scary. There are monsters everywhere. That might be a problem. So there's something unknown there. I'm just highlighting it because I think it might be important. You and your big brother should just keep safe. And we see how he sees them. You would abandon children. And we see this sort of quiet giant threat here. The willingness to use force if I must to get to what I believe. That's pretty cool. This is what you want in a bodyguard type of character. This is what you want. You want a little bit of a forceful personality. It's pretty good. They'll let you in once we talk. Very confident. And we bring out the chief. Oh yeah, also the Migurd, right? Yeah, Roxy. Migurdia. How'd you know? Yes, that's how. Really cool. A very fun reveal. A very fun reveal. And this is their hometown. We spent some time here and it's all cool and cute. Their lifetimes are different. Everything you know about everyone you know is not quite right. Judging people by their cover is wrong. The faces that you make when you eat shitty food, you still got to eat the shitty food, eat what you're given, and don't complain about it is a good lesson to have. Something was amiss, and they are smoking a bunch. She passes out, and we talk for real. I'll go with them. And what's the plan there? Well, you can't. And even if I must kill everyone else there, you're single-minded. You save that one. Will you be able to accomplish your goal? What's the goal? What do you hold on high? What are you fighting for? If I know what you're fighting for, then I can trust you. What are you fighting for? The reputation of my clan. Done. I trust you. What does that mean for me? It means that you're not going to do anything that might throw the reputation of your clan into jeopardy, which means you'll never hurt me, and you'll do everything you can to protect me. I'm down for that. That sounds like a good deal for me. Maybe too good, but fair enough. I'll help you in any way I can. So we come to this other turning point for him, for Rudy. That seems impossible. Who is this man for 40 years, whatever? Who has he been? He's been the guy who said, I can't. But I can't go outside, it's scary. But I can't exercise, it's hard. But I can't stop playing video games, I'm an addict. But I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. Now he's faced with something that is legitimately in the realm of potentially impossible. Not just going outside, but like actually hard. And his brain goes, man, that seems really impossible. Everybody hates the spurred. There's no way. And he expresses it, and we get the emotional content back. And this is Rudy's gaze at a man being a man. And his fury at the truth. Fury at being misrepresented. Fury at being called something he is not. And a really cool piece of animation that I do deeply wonder who animated this, because it's awesome. Rudy is taken aback. Lapless. So he tells the story and he learns the story. The spears, the corruption, which is a classic one. Weapons that corrupt, classic one. Power that corrupts, classic one. Lord of the Rings. Corrupted us. My son gave his life for it. The Spurred fought for him. But they made you monsters. This is my reason for being, and this is why I will fight. And Rudy thinks through it. 400 years, has he been alone that whole time? And in this moment, as he looks into the fire, he is both people. For just an instant, the thing that the man God said before, that you're not incorporated, your mental image and your physical image are not the same. You haven't unified. For a second, that's not true. And after that second, what happens? Rudy makes a good decision. The right decision. I understand. If a human child like me helps you, it might work. I accept. I will help you. This sounds difficult. I will shoulder the burden willingly. Yes. Yes, I will do this for you. And for me. And for all of us. And yes. Yes, I am worthy. Yes, I am worthy. I am worthy to carry the burden of leadership. I am worthy of showing the way. I am not perfect. But I'm as good as anyone else. And better than a lot. Follow me, baby. I'll follow people who are better than me. If I judge them to be better than me, then they damn well better be worth following. So if you judge me to be better than you, then follow me. Wow. Yeah. If you judge me to be better than you, if you admire me, then follow me. And I will do what I can. I'll do my best. I swear it. I will always do my best. For this. For the exploration of understanding and knowledge. I will do my best. I accept. I will help you. This sounds difficult. I will shoulder the burden willingly. That's different from letting the adventure just roll right over you. I will accept it willingly. Ah, when you accept the burden willingly and you admit your insufficiency, suddenly you gain the power that you need in order to accomplish the task. Boom. Fundamentals. And we meet the family, get some gifts, and we're gone. Wonder, okay, so what is that? They're nails or bits of stone and steel and some little engravings of monsters? I wonder what they actually are. Are they game pieces or... I don't know. I wonder what they actually are. So that's something interesting to wonder about for the future. Cool. So off we trot into the wild blue yonder, into the unknown, but we've gathered a new team member. Very cool. I wonder if we'll get any other squad mates, or if we're just going to start approaching difficult things now. Because I would expect the first challenge to be the next thing. Now that we've associated, we've kind of come together as RUDY, we've established our new place of being, and we've found a guide through it, and also somebody that we need to help, and a reason for being here. What's next? Probably an obstacle. That sounds about right to me. Cool. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for watching this. I will say, I apologize for making some of this discussion about a specific topic instead of the specific topic that you're here for. I hope that the 2.5 hours of pre-discussion in the comments section make up for that to some extent, and I hope that you see what I mean. Well, here's what I'll say. It's unfair of me to do that, and I'm doing it because it's an emotional content to me, and it might not be as emotionally resonant to you, and I'm sorry for that. That, to some extent, is unfair, and it's a misalignment of the purpose of my sitting here and having the video, which is not to have a spat about my Discord. That said, I felt the need to get it out, and so while I apologize for venting it to you, I really appreciate if you listen to any of it, and if you have any thoughts, or any places where you see me thinking incorrectly. If you see me becoming calcified, or solidified, and not taking my own advice, or not thinking properly, I would implore you to let me know in a serious manner, because I would like to know that, because I am not infallible. Even though I might express things in terms that seem like I'm stating grand truths, I'm only doing so because they strike my brain as like, whoa, that's so cool! And I want to express them in the most accurate and effective and grand and interesting way that I can. And I understand that that's not necessarily correct, and I'm working on it. And I appreciate you being patient with me as I work on it. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for any comments that you have about this video or previous ones. I'll see you next week for more Mushoku Tensei. Peace.